Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's September 25th, 2017 Town Council meeting. As always, we start with the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2, public comments. Mr. Bear.
I am the executioner. You have 4 minutes. 4 minutes past, they said. 1 minute. So you got 5 minutes total. If you need to speak again when everybody has spoken, you can come back for 3 minutes.
At the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting. Carlos, come on down, please.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Last meeting I attempted to make a few points, and as you all will certainly remember, the meeting was unorganized to say the least, and I'm hoping I can make a few points briefly tonight without interruption, without any obscenities being called out of the audience. I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. I want to refresh your memory about the significance of dangerous trees in Connecticut. Within the last 12 months, 2 Connecticut residents have been killed by roadside trees. Within the last 2 years, 4 cars have had trees land on them in the town of New Milford. That's not counting last Friday when there was another occurrence. One of those involved very serious injuries to a woman, permanent injuries. I had to work with our insurance carrier to defend some of those claims. And I can tell you that that's not an easy task, particularly in light of the dysfunction which I have repeatedly pointed to in this tree program. I want to correct something. I'm not going to get into the contract, the way that's been handled, the bidding. I think that the prediction I made 18 months ago about the lack of transparency and the unfairness that was demonstrated by the mayor's choice of contractor and manipulation of the contract has come to fruition as I predicted it would. No local contractors are interested in continuing to work for the town. Very sad state of affairs. The mayor has repeatedly said that, in fact, he made a comment just the last meeting. I don't sit in my office deciding what trees come down. That's public works. And I want to correct for everybody who is left with that impression. The trail of emails that I presented to the mayor and ultimately to you to make you aware that these trees were not being addressed and that months and months were going by with tagged trees hanging over the residents of this town. So to blame Public Works as if they were somehow responsible for languishing on this list of trees, I think is grossly unfair. And I'm going to read to you as early as February, okay, an email from Mike Zarba, Public Works Director, to the mayor. Mayor, first, I respectfully disagree that you have been left out of any of the current process. And in fact, I would state that the program is on hold only because a requisition has been on hold since November and waiting for your signature. We talked about this requisition at our November 9th meeting and again at our December 14th meeting. So, and it goes on, and I would encourage you to read through that and get a glimpse into the mayor's contention about how it is that dozens of trees were left for month after month after month. After I've met with property owners, agreed that a tree in their front yard that hangs over their children's heads is dangerous and needs to come down. And to leave me dangling in that situation, and more importantly, to leave the residents and taxpayers exposed to that is unconscionable. I'm not a political preacher, okay? You're gonna see me coming right down the middle of the street. I don't hide behind bushes like some of the furry political trolls that seem to orbit around the mayor, okay? That's not who I am. 30 years I've been in this community. I have dedicated myself to make a contribution any way I could. Very disappointed at what's going on. Please, I implore you, council members, do not do this to your new tree warden. Do not leave them in a position where state statute is being violated and the trees that they designate as dangerous are being left for month after month. It is a disservice to everyone. I also want to leave you with one other thought.
4 minutes, Carlos.
Thank you, Walter. The state low bid has been looked at as a way to pull the program out of a ditch. I agree something's got to be done with no local contractor showing interest. I will caution you that when we get a nor'easter or a hurricane or an ice storm that is region-wide, not just a microburst that comes through New Milford, we will have a very difficult time recruiting those people. You will get a busy signal when you attempt to reach those people. I see on the agenda that Joe Caranta is being slated for replacing me as tree warden. I have had several conversations with Joe. I have offered him my full support, and I intend to work with him if he wants for me to pass along any information that I have and to try to make this tree program work. The town residents deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Joseph Di Gregorio, please.
Good evening. Joseph Di Gregorio, 18 Cobbler Lane. I'm here as a town resident. Just to speak about 2 agenda items that are back to back. I've actually had the pleasure at the last meeting to speak with Joe. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but I guess he's being nominated to be tree warden. I think he's a great guy. He seems to really have a love for the town, and I think that that's great, and I think he'd probably do his best to do right by the town. But immediately before that, on the agenda tonight, is a very large donation from him, which I think is also spectacular. I mean, anyone who has a local business who's willing to donate nearly $100,000 worth of, their time and energy and effort and materials and whatever else to the town, I'm 100% behind it. So both items I think are great. But over the last couple of months being at these meetings, I've seen a pretty steady stream of people talking about ethics. And that's really a huge issue in the town, right? I mean, I think Mr. Kane had spoken in public comment, and now he's, sitting at the table with you. And I'm not going to say there's any impropriety there, but I definitely think that at least on the same town council agenda, having a $90,000 donation, and then immediately after that, appointing that person to a paid town position definitely has the appearance of impropriety, just looking at it from the outside. I definitely think that, either of those things would be good, but I would hope that you have the discussion as to whether or not that is the way that we want it to look. Like you could come and make a big donation to the town, and then you get appointed a position. And that's it. Thank you for hearing me.
Lisa Hyder, please.
Lisa Hida, 11 Buckboard Lane. Tonight I'd like to talk about checks and balances and processes. From my experience, good process does a lot of things. Number one, it facilitates understanding, common understanding of how things get done. It drives consensus, how decisions are made and how you have a say in those decisions. And it also can save the town money. Let me connect that statement with an agenda item that has concern for me, and that's item number 13. I couldn't find that there has been an ethics hearing for item number 13. And if so, what was the outcome? I couldn't find anything in the meeting minutes. The reason we have an ethics committee and a process is because there should be a way to confidentially express concern, have that investigated without any besmirching of anybody's name. I just want the town council to remember that in our history, in 2006, the town had to reimburse legal fees from a lawsuit when a false accusation was made and resulted in a judgment of compensatory damages and a public apology. We have a process. If it hasn't been followed, please consider that. If it has, I apologize. I just couldn't find it anywhere on our town portal. Along the lines of process, agenda item number 11A, the MOU for the Culinary School. Again, the process, I understand first zoning should have made a zoning adjustment for that particular accommodation. Again, I could not find anything in the meeting agendas or the meeting minutes, so that has actually been approved by zoning and moved forward. And subsequent to that, I would also call your attention to Section 503 of the town charter, that any real estate deals greater than 5 years in duration require a special town meeting. Now, it would be easy to say that, well, it's just a memorandum of understanding. It's not a legal transaction. However, once you start circumventing the process, it's easy to say, well, the MOU has already been agreed to. We should just go ahead and pass the real estate deal. So please follow the process because, again, that's going to drive understanding and consensus on critical items, potentially save us money and therefore the taxpayers' money, and safeguard our assets and interests. When we follow the rules, we follow the expectations we've set with the taxpayers. They've elected us. I've elected you under a code of conduct, and I expect that to be followed. That gives me the comfort that everybody is playing fair. We know how decisions are made, how to participate, and everybody wins. I'm going to change topics. It's a little bit related to process, so I need a little latitude. I want to talk about the solar project in Candlewood Mountain, and not about what's going to happen tomorrow night, support for or against, but thinking about things a little bit differently. And my question is, have we identified a contingency plan should the siting council say no? Here's a company interested in our community. Would be horrible to lose them. So let's do some math. $100,000 in payments to the town in lieu of taxes, $450,000 to the landowner as a lease agreement for 20 years. So $550,000 in costs from the Amoresco perspective. Century Brass. We lease Century Brass for $1 a year for 20 years. We keep the land rights. If you calculate the taxes on that property being very conservative with the level of investment and a hardware firmware calculation, the taxes per year should be around $530,000, but all to New Milford, all to the taxpayers. I know the acreage is different, but hear me out. Nobody, to my knowledge, has talked about the adjacent parcel to the north, 140 acres for sale at roughly $10,000 an acre. I have a hard time believing we couldn't find 10 to 15 buildable acres there. Now, I'm bringing this up not to say, hey, I've got a great idea, let's follow it, but to illustrate a point of contingency planning. If it's already been done or brought up, great, but if not, this is the kind of process that could really be helpful for us so we don't feel backed into bad decisions when our first plan hasn't come through. Businesses do this. You don't always get your first choice. Let's have some alternatives at the ready instead of thinking all or nothing. Thank you for your attention. Again, I thank you all for your service and for hearing me out.
Michael Sinella.
Mike Sinello, 39 Taylor Terrace. I've been asked by a number of people to become more vocal at meetings of this sort, and there are a number of items about which I'd like to discuss, but I'm limited to 5 minutes, which is one of the things I'd like to discuss, with the possibility of a 3-minute extension apparently to be at the end of the meeting, which I'd like to discuss. There are a number of items on the agenda I'd like to discuss, for example, the number of items on the agenda, or the fact that the final revision is not made available until the Friday afternoon before a Monday night meeting, or that no agenda is made available until the Wednesday afternoon before a Monday meeting. I'd really just like to discuss certain specific items on the agenda, such as why item 13 is even on the agenda. When we have an ethics commission, we have a code of ethics, so does the state. There is endless, clear legal precedent on the matter, and none of it involves the town council, except to specifically exclude members of the town council from being on the ethics commission. In the name of at least concision, do we really need item 13 on the agenda? Is its purpose to compel Mr. Esposito to preemptively abstain himself from public discussion of the matter? Because that would be an example of compelled speech, which, aside from being extraordinarily unethical and entirely antithetical to everything this country stands for, would be patently outside the legal authority of the council and an obvious overreach thereof, and an obviously politically motivated act of derision in a time when this room has been bombarded with pleas to end the political divisiveness. Hopefully at least one member of this council understands it is absolutely within their authority to move to strike item 13 from the agenda, not table its discussion, if not explicitly, then at least implicitly so, because the council clearly has the authority to add items to the agenda. What I will do is reintroduce an abridged version of what I've called the Taylor Protocol as one of the alternatives you might get suggested from the public should a committee be formed to evaluate alternatives to the JPS project. It is by no means a solution to the problem, but an example of the better alternatives the community might provide if they were involved in the process. It should also be noticed I already presented this idea when it was ignored roughly a year ago. In 2012, JPS was appraised at $11.4 million. Assuming a measly 1% inflation rate, that's $12 million by today's standards. Taylor's is on the market for $1.8 million. You may not get your $12 million, but whatever the difference is pre-established as a renovation budget, which, for the record, would be certainly increased if the property were rezoned as industrial property, and the enormous increase in annual tax revenue would provide a substantial boon towards the maintenance of new buildings, which furthermore would not need nearly as much maintenance if they were brand new, creating an obvious operational cost savings. This, of course, doesn't even factor in the effect of bringing industrial jobs to a town that desperately needs them. The buildings also address all of the concerns brought forth by all interested parties. 1, the finished lumber warehouse could easily be converted into a gym. 2, the brick building provides a massive 3-bay garage for park and rec vehicles and equipment, which are now being stored at a commercial warehouse behind what was once Arby's. And the adjacent yard office building could easily be converted into administrative office for park and rec, addressing the much ignored concern for the consolidation of facilities. JPS doesn't have a garage, so that route would not actually act to consolidate their facilities. Using JPS also does not resolve the concerns of the complications with getting vehicles and equipment over to DPW for repair. I'm sure the Housatonic Rail Authority would be happy to give the town permission to drive vehicles over the tracks, and that would allow vehicles and equipment to be much more easily limped into DPW's facilities right down the hill when needed. 3, you won't have to build sidewalks because they're already in place. 4, you won't have to worry about having the youth agency and social services in the same building because the campus has 4 separate buildings. 5, there is a commercial kitchen right across the street. It's called the Max. 6, playing fields are, again, right down the hill at Young's Field. Furthermore, since playing fields at JPS are not part of the property that would be for sale, you'd not be losing any field space. 7, the campus already has a sewer connection. 8, the rental offices could easily be converted into a meeting area. 9, the campus includes 3 already existing parking areas. Parking would not be an issue. 10, that leaves you a hardware store for a Board of Education and Social Services. This is where you spend the bulk of your renovation money and demolish the old building and put in something brand new. 11, because you already have a budgeted capital, there would be no need to sell the little splitting, which is why it has been listed for sale, which is much greater intrinsic value, far lesser property value, and far lesser private developmental value than the JPS. Therefore, the youth agency could have the whole building to themselves, which is actually what they've been clamoring for. Perhaps the greatest benefit to the Taylor Protocol is that the facility would be entirely within downtown New Milford, keeping New Milford's public services consolidated into the heart of our community. Of course, Harry Taylor was a great man, and it is a shame that the governing bodies never considered the idea presented to them when he was alive, as he may have been kind enough to offer the property to town at an enormous discount, and he may have simply donated the property if he knew the town were serious about the protection. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Greg Molina.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of, in support of the Culinary School locating into John Pettibone. And some of you will remember, I think it was about 11 years ago, that I came to the council to ask for a bit of extra money in my personnel budget to be deferred into some salary for Dawn Hamicott, because she had been working as a volunteer for 6 or 8 months and needed to get a little bit of working income, and she was able to work for about 10 weeks on the with the help of our town, and ultimately 10 years ago now we did open up the Culinary School and are currently on our 35th class. Just want to make 2 points to you. One is that as social services director, I would absolutely say that my role in helping to start the Culinary School and to work on this board has been the most gratifying experience in my work with the town. I think that it, from my vantage point, offers such hope, seeing people who have been food bank recipients and, just really down on their luck, go through a program like this and become independent, become so confident, and have a way to move forward in their lives has just meant the world to me, and I think to a lot of us. Many of you support this school already and know it well. And the other thing is that they have donated over 10,000 meals to the food bank, and that's been an integral component right from the get-go. And 10,000, I mean, it's pretty awesome. So we'd love to see that continue. We'll be up the road pretty soon ourselves, and I think that the school is committed to that, and it would be awesome if it's trolleying food down the hall rather than figuring out the logistics a few miles away. So thank you.
Barnes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Executioner. Michael Barnes, 17 Sullivan Farm. I'd like to address item 8 on your agenda, and specifically the appointment of Daniel Straw to the Economic Development Commission. It's been a long-standing convention in this town that before a name is moved forward, that to replace a Republican or a Democrat for a position, that the respective town committee be afforded the ability to endorse such a candidate. We were not afforded that possibility. I know Liba Furman would have never done this and put forward a name without consulting us, but here we are. Mr. Straw may be a very nice guy, I'm sure he is, but he has expressed an interest, which was overheard, talking to a Democratic town committee member and council member. He has expressed an interest in switching parties to the Democratic Party. Now, I don't care what party the guy belongs to, but to put himself up as an appointment as a Republican when he's already expressed a desire to switch parties, I don't believe is very ethical. So I would suggest that this council not approve that appointment, because the Republican town committee cannot endorse someone in such a situation. I would suggest that the town council member who actually had that conversation with Mr. Straw make it known to the council, and that at least he not vote for Mr. Straw, or at least recuse himself from voting with this kind of foreknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Amy Gillette, please. I'm sorry, pardon. All ears. Gaylord Road, Light? Robert, crying out loud. Write the names so you read it. Robert.
You called me by the wrong name for years, Walt. Good evening.
That's
Blythe Roberts, 64 Gaylord Road. I'm here on behalf of our culinary school, the town's culinary school. 10 years ago, Dawn Hamcott approached me and threw this pitch. Long story short, I accepted. Give me a year, go on your way. 10 years, I'm still here, although I'm stepping in now for the instructor who took my place, who is one of my earlier graduates. So I never stopped working with my school, our school. Town of New Milford, it's like a beacon. We've taken all these students in 35 classes now, and some of my students under my tenure, they're chefs in their own right across the country. They're my peers. But as Peg pointed out, the meals that we provide with all the food that we get from the local farms or wherever we get our food, it goes back to our neediest. And for us to expand, imagine the dreams and the things we can accomplish. And I don't care, like the guy that was just before me, I don't care about your party affiliation, because it matters nothing to me. All I know is I'm going to teach my students, and my students will feed the mass. That's it. Simple. Have a good night.
Peter Mullen, please.
Thank you, Walter. Peter Mullen, 64 Old Ridge Road. 10 years ago, when the vote for the culinary school was before the town council, it was rather contentious. It was not a unanimous vote. It was split because there was money. There had to be some starter money. And I remember that. And it passed by one vote, 5-4. So 10 years later, we're in a much better position. Number of graduates they've had, what they've supplied to the town, and now it's taking that next step forward. I can't say enough about how great this is going to be for the town, how positive this is, so hopefully everybody will support that. Item 12, Bike and Trail Committee. Going to have a presentation about New Milford River Trail, including the proposed route north to Sega Meadows, south to Brookfield. There's so many ways to improve your town and get people interested in your town, get people want to come to your town and buy the homes and be active in your town. And I see some people pushing for more retail. This town isn't going to grow by supporting retail. Read the newspapers. Retail is not working in this country right now. Amazon is looking for a place to put their, headquarters in New England, and cities are fighting over it. What we have to do is things like this. Bike and trail. This is how you attract people to New Milford. I had a conversation with one person here who's very involved in cycling, and I said, I think New Milford has the potential to be the Boulder, Colorado of the East, where people will come to the town for outdoor activities, whether it be cycling, using the river, hiking. This is a way to attract people to your town and make it positive. So those are just two things on the agenda that if you want to make your town better and more positive and attract people to them, that's it right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Mike Nahum.
Hi, Mike Nahum. I am the president of the Culinary School, so I'll be quick because you've heard a few enough people. First thing I was told, it's 80,000 meals that we've given to the food bank since our inception at 10,000. I don't know where Peg got that number, but it's 80,000. The main thing I just want to talk about and why I got involved with this is job training. They keep saying that kids are graduating high school and they don't have skills to get a job. Moving on to college, it's great. We're doing a good job getting kids there, but kids graduating New Milford High School, this is actually a chance to expand the amount of people we're training. We could start doing night classes. We can do a lot of different things, have our own space, and also becoming more self-sufficient by expanding the kitchen and doing some more catering. It's an amazing group of people, and it's an amazing organization, and the amount of people we've gotten. I mean, the people that come to our class, and Dawn and Blythe and Justin, I mean, a lot of them are down in their luck and just have nowhere to turn. And the turnaround, if you ever come to one of our graduations, to see the difference between when they start and when they finish, it's amazing how we get them on our feet. And to be able to touch more people by going into Pettibone would be amazing. And just to address one thing, we do know that we have to go through zoning in order to get the zone changed, and a lot of that's going to have to wait on until some things are done. But the MOU is just our first step. It's going to help us get the donors in place because we do have to retrofit the kitchen because that's been spared. So we do know there's a long process ahead of us, and this is just the first step. It's not the final thing. So thank you, and I'll be around later on if you have questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jeff Winter, please.
Hello, Jeff Winter, 22 Morey Road. Needless to say, the last town council meeting was highly unusual and chaotic, I think was the description someone had earlier. I think that's fair to say. And one of the things that's come up, of course, is, shall we say, civility, or just, we'll just say general behavior. It's easy to point out some of the things that happened last meeting, but I think it's also important to point out some of the things that were more subtle in terms of their obstructionist, essentially even trying to rewrite the town charter as we sat here at the table. Mr. Zemansky, who I guess is not here tonight, so I guess he can't really defend himself, but to try to come up with the logic that suddenly nominating someone to an elected board should only serve until the day after the election would be the first time in the history of New Milford. And there's no one at this table in their tenure that has ever voted for anything like that, or anyone preceding that, or anyone preceding that, or anyone preceding that. So why would he do that? That's a really good question. I think we all know why, and we'll leave it at that. In fact, what was interesting also was that because I was nominated to be on the pension committee at the last meeting, and fortunately or unfortunately, I was not asked to come up and speak because the terms for that particular commission were all screwed up. I went, looked at the town charter, and in 2011, those of you who were here in 2011, including Mr. Zemansky, including Mr. Bass, Mr. Esposito, Mr. Wargo, etc., voted to change the terms for the members of the pension committee. Yet everyone forgot about that. Everyone who's on the pension committee now should have been off at the latest 2015. And there was never a vote. People just, the previous mayor just put up their names, resubmitted them, and you guys all thought it was okay. So why is it okay to not follow the rules that you guys personally set up? And he's trying to rewrite the charter? What's up with that? Just very odd. Very odd behavior. And then also, you guys were asked to actually make a public, shall we say, vote on something that you're not going to vote on just because a member of this council wants people on the record for an election. Now, frankly, is that unethical? No. But let's get to some real questions that really need to be answered if we want to talk about issues at this table. Number one, we have, of course, a serious matter of ethics on the table tonight. Number two, we have members of this council who do not properly answer FOI requests. That's a serious matter that needs to be discussed. And frankly, I would just ask, okay, do members of this body believe in paying their taxes on time? If we really want to get into that, we can. Because 2 out of 9 still haven't paid their car taxes as of today, even though it was noted publicly in the newspaper a week ago. Is that how we want our town leaders to behave? I think that's far more important than worrying about a vote that's not really a vote. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, that's the end, please.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 3 on the agenda, approval of prior minutes. Entertain a motion.
Approve the regular town council meeting minutes of 9/11/2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comment? Mr. Bear and Mr. Wargo.
Frank, first.
Okay, Mr.
In reference to the last meeting, I believe there was a letter of apology by Mr. Gentile to the mayor and the council, and I think in fairness to Mr. Gentile that should be read into the record, that he did apologize for that behavior, and he said that would not happen again. And I think the letter should go into the minutes.
Sure. I don't know if it goes into last week's minutes, but we can make it a part of this week's minutes.
There should be an official recording that Mr.
Sure.
Gentile did make an apology. Everybody makes mistakes.
Sure. Fair enough, and we could make that a part of this week's minutes as well. Very good. Mr. Bear? We do have a letter, yes.
Well, my spin-off from Mr. Wargo, my comment was about comments like cheat, sneaky, scumbag. I have a real problem. I don't care who you are. Absolutely inappropriate. Whether you're a town councilman or whether you're on the zoning board of appeals, particularly if you're the mayor. Yes, the guy lost his cool, and I don't know if I need help there, if that should be included in the minutes, but I am pleased that a letter of apology was sent to your office. But using the term scumbag just does not sit well with me at all. I don't care who you are, whether you like them or not. It is most improper and just totally out of order. So I don't know if you want to include that or a letter of apology. I could live with that if.
I'll leave it to the council members. Do you want to get into more specifics? It's the minutes are fairly general. It just talk about an argument, I leave it to you guys.
Well,
Ms.
I'd
Francis.
say, Pat, Walter, you just said it. It's part of our record of this meeting, plus we have the letter from Mr. Gentile, which is very apologetic. I think that covered everything that happened, pretty much. You could mention the bad words. I'd be happy with that.
Okay, Mr. Warden.
In the minutes, I'm sorry, I don't remember whether the word scumbag was in the minutes.
No, it's not that specific.
5 years from now, when somebody reads the record and it says it was out of order, you won't have a gist of what that was all about, or the apology. I think the word scumbag is what really caused the consternation and the request for an apology. So I think there should be an official record of exactly, of course, we have a tape recording of that.
That's what I was saying.
But it should be recorded that that was the term used, and that was what was disrespectful to the mayor and to the council. In 24 years on this council, I have never had a meeting like that. And I don't want to dramatize it, okay? I was sick about it, but it was on my mind for the next 4 or 5 days. I just kept going over it. Says, what have we come to that we can do that? So,
Mr. Kane and then Ms. Francis.
Yes, it's disrespectful to the council and to the mayor, but it's disrespectful to the people of New Milford who we represent. That's all I have to say.
Ms.
I'd
Francis.
just like, how about a friendly amendment to our minutes?
I think that's where we were kind of leaning towards. you know.
Looking for some help here.
Yeah.
If you feel that in the future someone look at it, I agree with you that the minutes don't get specific, and if that would make everybody happy, I agree with you. It was an insult to everybody in the room, and he has apologized for it, but it wouldn't hurt to put it in there.
Ms. Francis, and then, I'm sorry, Mr. Lundgren.
I agree. I think it should be in the minutes. It was said, and it was the major part of the problem, and I think it needs to be addressed, and it should be in the minutes.
So let me make a suggestion then. So we're talking about page 11 of 19, right before the meeting recessed at 8:49. Let me suggest language. Mr. Gentile shouted from the seating area, "You're a scumbag." The meeting devolved with shouting, and a recess was called. Is that fair? Subsequently, an apology was submitted to the mayor and to the town council.
And put the letter of apology in as part. Yeah.
That'll work for me.
Works for me.
And I think the apology did include the people in the audience too.
Yeah, it was everybody. Everybody that witnessed it, and you're right. It really is the town in the process. So, all in favor of that friendly amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then, for acceptance of the minutes themselves, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. One abstention. Okay. Item 4. Mayor's comments. So I have a couple of announcements. We do have a substance abuse survey and forum that is going to be held this Thursday, September 28th at Sarah Noble School from 7 to 8:30. I encourage everybody to attend. It is a great achievement that our Substance Abuse Council was able to put together this survey and collect this data so that we could intelligently start to address what's going on with our youth, what's going on in our schools with regard to drug abuse and substance abuse. And I think you're going to be surprised not only at the areas where we need to do work and we need to address what's happening with our students, but also the positive things that are reflected by this survey as well in terms of self-esteem and things of that nature. So I encourage you to attend, and it's a great discussion. We need to have it and continue to move forward. Let's see, this weekend there was the John Pettibone Community Center grand opening. And so I appreciate what people are saying about it. I wish they'd been there to see the positivity and what we've done with the community center. I was giving tours on Saturday to people, and they were just astounded at what Parks and Rec has kind of grown into compared to where they are now, what the youth agency is able to get into, and just to talk about some of the positives. I mean, Parks and Rec had to find program space all over town at various schools. Now they have program space in the community center itself, as well as primary access to the gym, eventually to the library, to the cafeteria. So they're able to do more with that space and being there, and just their administrative offices are so much better too. The youth agency, I mean, the three main things I pointed out to people. Number one, they're doubling their space. Number two, morally, they can actually service the disabled youth in our community now. It's something that they've never been able to do it for as long as they've been at the East Street building. I reflected on a story that Mark Mencken had talked about years ago, where they had to offer to carry somebody up the stairs who was disabled up to the youth agency. So they're able, from a moral and a legal point of view, to service this very important part of our community, as well as their parents or grandparents or anybody else that has a disability. And number three is technology. The youth agency was still using dial-up internet where they were at the East Street building, and so much of what they're doing over there is digital. It's CJI. They've got a green screen. It's media. And by being at the building now, they've got high-speed fiber. They've got wireless. So instead of kids kind of doing their work and bringing it back to the youth agency to work on it from home and bringing it back, they're able to actually do it there and have the technology to do more. And everything else from the Latchkey program is our largest daycare right now in school. In the town, the youth agency operates through the Latchkey program, and being at that facility and having more space and having the gym and the fields and the cafeteria and the library, it's going to allow the youth agency to grow with the Latchkey program as more pressure gets put on it as well. So it was a really positive event. Social Services is in the process of having some of their rooms subdivided, because where they are now, they don't have any privacy. It's a tremendously sensitive area when they're dealing with people that have these really confidential issues, and it's basically just an open space that they have now. So they're going to have privacy. They're going to be on one floor, where the food bank, if anybody has ever seen what they do in the food bank, it is absolutely astounding. The amount of food that is donated to the food bank every week is incredible, from farms and from supermarkets. And where they are now at the second floor of the senior center, they have to cart it up through the elevator, they have to distribute it in the middle of the hallway, and they have to store it in basically these small closets. So I know that they're excited to be in the community center, where they've got more space for storage, more space for distribution, and it's just on one floor with easy access to the parking lot. It's going to make it a lot easier. And we're open, the community center is open for bookings. So people are already contacting, they could contact my office to just book the cafeteria, to book classrooms, to book the gym, and eventually be able to book the library as well. And they're already contacting us, and it's free of charge to any local nonprofit. If there's food involved, there is a charge if there's an event or something like that, but they could contact my office, and we're already filling up space. It's a really positive thing. We're already running out of room. So that was really great. And I invite people to continue to come to the community center and look at it. Look what we've done. It's very positive, it's beautiful, and people are very happy with it. Siting Council, I know it's been discussed. There is a meeting tomorrow on the Candlewood Solar Project. It is here tomorrow at 6:30 in this room. So I encourage people to come and to address the Siting Council. And as I've said as well, the town has submitted interrogatories. We've passed along all of the comments and positions from our various town boards, from zoning to farmland to wetlands as well. So it is a very involved presentation, but we asked for this public hearing through my office. It wasn't required, it wasn't necessarily scheduled, but given the amount of concern in the community, we specifically asked them to have this public hearing, so I'm sure it'll be well attended, but I encourage people to come as well. Century Brass, some good news on that. I know that people have been starting to wonder what is going on with that pile of steel that's been sitting there. I'm just happy that the building is down. The steel is there because we were waiting on EPA approval to remove the steel from the property. That's something that's been taking a number of months, and I do have to thank our Public Works Director, Mike Zarba, TRC Solutions, Ed Doubleday, and a number of other people that I thanked today on a press release that I sent out, because we do finally have that EPA approval, and we will be working over the next couple of weeks to remove that steel, to start looking at the next phase of that project, which is to start getting that property generating tax revenue and be an asset for the community again. And to address what was said, we are actually actively engaged in having solar on a portion of that property. So we've got, we're talking with people to get a proposal together so that we can actually occupy that property and have solar panels and use that energy that's generated to benefit the town. Bank Street has been milled and paved today. That's pretty incredible what they did in one day. And the Mill Street Bridge, which is just around the corner from us over here, we've got a notice to proceed. So they will start work on replacing that bridge, which is in really, it's in need of repair over the next year. It should be done by October. So with that being said, we will move on to item 5. Native Meadows. A lot of people don't know what Native Meadows is. I'm going to invite Curtis Reed up here to give a little bit of the background and where we are and what an asset this is going to be for New Milford as well. Right up there, Mr. Reed.
Well, I'd like people in the audience to hear this too. I'm nervous with my back to this crowd.
I know. Well, Curtis, why don't we start? A lot of people don't even know what it is. So this is the property right across from Young's Field.
Well, I'm representing the Northwest Conservation District, which serves 34 towns in the Northwest Connecticut. And I've been chairman for a long time. And there was the opportunity that came up a few years ago when the EPA fined GE for polluting the Housatonic River with PCBs. And part of that was a fund that was created, the Natural Resource Damage Fund, and they were going to distribute money in Connecticut. So I had this bright idea going back to my days at Sunny Valley when I first moved here, that is an area that's extremely important to the town, and this is right over the bridge, all that land that lays across from Big Y. And it's on this side of Route 7 and that side of the river. And this is about 26 acres, used to grow corn. And if you go way back in time to, I think it was 1702 or something, the natives sold it to people in New Milford for 60 pounds and 20 pounds of goods. But they actually held on to that property because it was their best piece of farmland. And the water table is just under the soil, which is silt, which is replenished by floods, as we know. So the natives sold it to them again. But in any case, that property came up as a potential site. And if you think about it, that property is right at the confluence of the Housatonic with the Asquatuck. And the Asquatuck splits east and west right there behind Agway. So this is an area that's important to wildlife, migrating wildlife, to riverine species. But the most important aspect of this property is it's there for flood protection and aquifer protection. It's in the direct recharge zone of the wells that serve New Milford, both the main wells that are right by Big Y, south of Big Y, and the newer wells that were put in, and they're back behind where the, I guess the church is, and that area is north. And that area is, those wells are potentially, could be contaminated very easily. And there were leaking gas stations, and there were salt piles at the DOT and things that did contaminate those wells. And it's important that this property is one of the main recharge zones, so it should stay natural for a lot of reasons. So I wrote a grant in 2006. It was eventually accepted in 2008. It was the highest scoring of over 90 projects that were proposed in Connecticut for all those reasons. And we got a $348,000 grant. The property sold for $250,000, and fortunately my good friend Bob Rush was head of the New Milford Affordable Housing Trust. They needed a drainage easement. They bought the property because we couldn't move fast enough because we didn't have the money, and the St. John's were going to sell the property. So they stepped in and bought it, and then we bought it from them a year later for $10,000 more for their troubles and gave them the easement. There is, as you know, that goes underwater. It also drains Route 7. A contractor, without the Clifford's knowledge, had gone in and dug out a bunch of gravel and built up Route 7 at that intersection when we redid the intersection over the bridge there. They sued, they got money, but that area is now a place where water runs off of Route 7, goes in there, and eventually soaks in the ground. And it filters the water before it gets down to the aquifer. It is an incredibly beautiful piece of property. We've removed not native species, invasive and planted native species, planted trees along the bank. Last week it was mowed. The mayor got that done, and eventually, sometime in the next few months, the idea of the grant all the way along was to turn it over to New Milford. I worked with Pat Murphy on this years ago, and we wanted to end with Julie Bailey, the River Trail people, to make it like a central park for New Milford. It's going to be a natural park, with walking paths. Vic Nelson donated gravel and built the parking lot. That was a donation to the town, which you see now north of the Equine building along Route 7. You park there. There are about 8 spaces there. It's good for scouts and kids to visit. There'll be interpretive signs. They'll be ready in a month or 2. And then there'll be a trail network where you can wend your way through this wonderland of nature. And there are all kinds of things out there that you see in migrating birds, and the Audubon's looked at it, and we've done species counts and things like that. I think it's a natural central park for New Milford. There's a old river channel that's a pond, and there are ducks, that's on the property. The property to the north of that, they may want to donate that, and there's a property to the north of that they consider donating it, so you could have maybe 34, 35 acres in here, instead of just 25 or so. But it's beautiful, and I hope, we're going to be a backup easement holder. We'll suggest a management plan to New Milford, but the management plan is going to be mowing it a few times a year with brush hog. So I look forward to giving anybody a tour. We have a lot of documentation on this, and we'll be turning it over to New Milford, like I said, in a month or 2. So, yeah, the questions, I'd be happy to answer.
That's fantastic. So, any comments or discussion? I mean, from my point of view, this is exactly what New Milford is doing with restoring the waterfront, opening up, access to the waterfront and the properties along it, and preserving some of this natural beauty that is inherent with it. So, I really do thank Curtis, all the work that he put into it, and with everybody's permission, I'm going to work with, Rebecca. We got one of our first projects. We'll work out the logistics, the paperwork, to have this transferred over. We've already spoken with Parks and Rec and Dan Calhoun, so he's familiar with the property, and we're figuring out how to address the management plan. But like Curtis said, it just has to be knocked down a couple of times a year, and let its natural beauty kind of speak for itself. So with that, any questions or comments? We'll be moving forward with it then over the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much, Curtis, the Northwest Conservation Commission. Ms. Bailey, you have something to add.
First of all, I want to commend Curtis for the sheer amount of work this has taken, the sheer amount of years it's taken to do. But for us on riverfront revitalization, what it does is whatever is done on that riverfront looks out on something that's totally forever wild on the other side. And that's a piece of impression, future thinking of the kind that we can do more in our towns. I'm very pleased.
That's a really good point. We opened up the riverfront with the river trail now, and it looks out on this really kind of beautiful piece of property. I see Mr. Watzak.
I'm not really that familiar with the property, but it seems like maybe it's already been thought of that you've got the walkway right going across the bridge there, that maybe there could be an access point from that side of the property at some point.
Yeah, we're actually looking to, so that the trail would connect with the pedestrian walkway over the bridge, as well as wend its way through to the parking lot, so that it's one connected, cohesive thing.
There's only one little area in there, which is a DOT easement with a drainage channel. As you're walking over the bridge, you can't just hop in right there. You got to go around the corner, and we'll make an entry there probably also. At one point, there were a lot of tents and homeless people living there, and there was a lot of garbage and things like that out on that site. So we're hoping people will stay on the trails and enjoy it, and you'll not get ticks and things like that.
Yeah, it'll be a nice resource. Thank you, absolutely. Thank you so much. Very positive. All right, item 6, we got a donation of tree services. We've got Mr. Quaranta here from Advanced. He was here before. We talked about it last time, at public comment. Mr. Quaranta had been working for a number of weeks. This isn't something that just happens, overnight. He's been working with our Boardman Bridge Commission, and he's been working with the Hidden Treasures Parks Commission, or Committee. And Mr. Quaranta owns Advanced Construction. He's got a background, he's got the equipment for removing a lot of overgrown shrubs and brush and trees. And his donation is greatly appreciated on behalf of the town. If anybody else has anything to add to it, it's going to make a big difference in moving those projects forward and really, allowing the town to enjoy Boardman Bridge and this beautiful resource at Hidden Treasures Park. Yes, Ms. Francis?
I'd like to move that we accept his donation.
Sure. I mean, I can't imagine rejecting it, but that might be a first.
Yeah. I
Yes.
just also want to say that I had heard about, all this, that Joe has been donating like 6 to 8 weeks ago. It's been talked about. I'm on the Bike and Trail Committee, and we talk about Hidden Treasures Park, and I've been hearing about this for quite a while, that he's been donating his services and money for, so thank you to Joe. It's just a wonderful thing.
That does address the timeline. Somebody did raise the issue of, is this, is he doing this so that he can get the tree warden job? I mean, if anybody on the council thinks that, please raise it now. But I think the timeline of events sets that to rest. The tree warden, job wasn't available until after Mr. Quaranta had, announced his donation. And like I said, he's been working on this with the commissions for weeks. The two are really unrelated, but it does reflect his dedication to service to the town, and I appreciate both aspects of it. But if anybody does have a concern that there is something nefarious or there's an ethical violation, please raise it. We'll address it. Not hearing any.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a second of the motion to accept the tree services. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Quaranta. It's very much appreciated. And that was for A and B,
Right.
So it's $60,000 and $30,000 worth of services. Item 7, tree warden appointment. Entertain a motion.
Discussion and possible action on the appointment of Joe Quaranta as tree warden for the town of New Milford.
So moved.
Okay. Mr. Quaranta, I don't know if you want to come up and have anything to say. If anybody has any questions for him, Joe is a licensed arborist. He satisfies the requirements for the statutory requirements to be a tree warden. Just a little bit background for people that don't know your expertise and everything like that.
Right. As the mayor said, I am a Connecticut licensed arborist. I taken part in all types of projects throughout the state and the Northeast for that matter. We do large-scale vegetation management for the state of Connecticut on main thoroughfares, highways. We've done a lot of work for the railroad, as well as vegetation removal for unexploded ordnance removal and soil remediation projects. And I, in fact, was one of the town tree contractors for many years. So a line of dialogue was opened between me and the town recently as they started to explore the possibility of using the Connecticut low bid. I, in fact, one of those bidders on that list. And I mentioned to the town that I thought maybe I would be better suited in the, because we don't have a tree warden at this time, in an effort to keep things moving, that I would be better served in that position in lieu of the work for the town of New Milford, okay? And I would hope that the town residents and the commission, appreciate that, because it is a lot of money and lost revenue for my business. I didn't even, quite frankly, know that it was a paid position. Certainly, I'm not really all that interested in the payment involved, to be perfectly frank with you. I've been on both sides of the coin, so, I think I have a very good understanding what's in the best interest of the town and the health and safety of our community, as well as its personal property, but I've also been a contractor for the town of New Milford, so I believe I have a good understanding of how we want to treat our contractors, too. With that being said, I'm honored to be able to accept a position like this for the town. In just a week, we've made some very good progress. We had an emergency today that got dealt with, in my opinion, very well. I had gotten a call at 11:30 that there was a tree limb over a road. I responded to that call by 12:30. A contractor was called upon off of the state bid, and he responded and was en route and took care of the tree at 2 o'clock. So I thought that was very good response by everyone. DPW, the contractor that we contacted. So we made progress, and I think that's really why I'm here tonight. Mr. DiGregorio raised some concerns about ethics and all that. I mean, look, I've lived in this town for 40 years. I was raised here, right across from Mr. Wargo, my father, who enjoyed cigars. We used to get them at Mr. Bass's shop. I played Little League Baseball here. I've been involved in youth hockey. So I hope that the donation, which we started that months and months ago, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, it's not misconstrued. We grew up differently years ago. We used to shop at the IGA. We rode our dirt bikes on the dirt roads in town here. We played baseball in the street. I mean, it was a nice place to grow up. So times have changed. We can't do some of the things that we did when we were kids back then, and I just thought it would be a nice gesture to the town to give back where I can and provide parks and, restore bridges here, and, it's a great place to live. So that's why I'm here.
I appreciate it. I know it is. Thank you. So, does anybody have any questions? Mr. Wargo?
Yeah, a couple of questions. It was brought up that there might be a problem with getting a state contractor to come in if there's a big storm. Do you foresee that as a problem?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So in my discussions with the mayor and DPW, I recommended that for at least the short term, in an effort to continue to have a mechanism to remove trees, okay, that we adopt state low bid, all right? In that time that we're using that, okay, and I think everyone agrees that the existing in-house town contract isn't exactly perfect, so we're going to review that and make whatever changes we can to it to keep this work available to local contractors, okay, and I think everybody's in agreement with that. So that concern is valid. I've discussed this with many of the vendors on that list. They certainly have a big workload, just as if one of our local contractors would. So we are going to not only have the Connecticut state low bid as a resource, but tailor our in-house bid to have that as a resource as well. So we'll have two options.
Okay, another question. I think it's 169 miles of roads we have in this town. So if you do the math, that's 338 miles of trees you have to look at.
That's a lot of trees.
Yeah. There you go. Is there a plan I mean, how do you have spies out there looking for trees? I mean, you obviously did not survey 338 miles of woods to make determination which is bad or not. So how is that done? I
Okay.
actually don't know.
So, and I think, well, we're at the mercy of the call of the individual that finds that tree. So somebody calls DPW, and since I've got a tree in my front yard that looks like it's dying, or it is dead, or it has something hanging out of it, and then of course DPW is dispatched to that, and the tree warden will be dispatched to that and make a determination if that tree is a public safety issue, and if it is, it's marked for removal. So we're on the defensive with that. So moving forward, and I think in some of our discussions, we were going to explore, a program of sorts. So maybe be proactive, and of course, that has a lot to do with budgets. That's beyond my pay grade. Okay, but in other towns, typically, when they know they're going to pave a road or put in basins or do a substantial amount of work on a capital project, that maybe we encumber some tree work into that project. And so when we take care of, let's say, Long Mountain Road, we take care of everything and we leave for 25 years with, there's the chance that you have one or two emergencies, but you look at it as a whole and move on. And then you go on to Taylor Road and on to other roads. So have a program, not just be on the defense all the time, Mr. Warden.
Good. So we need a neighborhood watch for trees.
That's right. We have it, so.
So I hope the paper gets that. The
Yeah.
responsibility for safety for trees is yours as well as the tree warden.
That's right.
Very good.
Any questions
Any other
for me?
questions?
Any
Yeah.
more questions?
Mr.
Did
Kane?
you say unexploded ordnance?
Yes, sir. I did.
Be careful,
Yeah.
John, they're all around us.
Yes.
You live in a tough neighborhood.
Yeah.
It is in a tough neighborhood, that job.
Well, I think we've got a motion and we've got a second. Mr. Bass?
Thank you. John, just a couple quick questions. So any type of town bid right now, you're gonna recruit yourself?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so aerial tree work for the town of New Milford, I forfeit my right to do that, obviously. And I'm happy to do that for the town to accept the position.
And the going with the state bid is just right now a temporary thing till you come up with a more local plan for.
And of course, it's not just me, there's many departments involved when it comes to developing a bid, and really outside of my job description, if I may. But I'm excited to put forth my 2 cents to the writing of a new bid, or the repair of the existing one, right? I'm sorry, what else? Yeah. Thanks.
Excellent. All right, very good. All right. Hearing no more further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Quaranta.
Thank you.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8. We've got appointments, Economic Development Commission.
Okay, motion to approve the appointment of Daniel Straw, Republican, to the Economic Development Commission for the term 9/25/2017 to 11/30/2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dan, we usually don't require anybody to come up here, but you were kind of addressed with this claim that you're thinking of switching parties. Do you want to come up here and address that? I hadn't heard that, for the record, and I've never known you to be anything but a very passionate Republican, actually, but also passionate about the town as well, and would be a great resource for economic development and a nice kind of fresh breath of air. But
With your consent, may I stand to the side where I can...
Yeah, sure, please.
Thank you for your compliments, Mr. Mayor. And to address the gentleman, I have no plans of changing. I don't want to get into it. He said, she said. I frankly have no recollection of the conversation. But regardless of that, I have no plans of changing. I think that if you got to know me better, you'd know that about me. And I hope that we can have the opportunity to go sit down and have a brew sometime, so that you can have your confidence in me. I am a New Milfordite, first and foremost.
above all else. And my track record for this town, many of you know me, is, if not through the real world, to the internet world, is to just do nothing but try and bring more positivity to our great community. I've wanted to live here since I was 16 years old. And for the last 7 years, I've had the opportunity. And when I saw an opportunity to give in my own way, I took it. And wow, you guys, you humble me with your acceptance. So, sorry, bro. I don't really have a family. My brother doesn't like me. I don't have any kids. My mother's not a healthy person. And so I have achieved the highest level of fulfillment in my entire life in the last 14 months of being in this town, thanks to all of you. So I'm sorry I buried my soul a little bit.
No, we appreciate it. Again, it's service, and
I just want to help.
I know how much you care about this community and how involved you are. I didn't even, frankly, when your name came up, I didn't know if you were Republican or Democrat, but I know that you're a good person and you care about this. Yeah, absolutely. So, Mary Jane and then Ms. Francis.
Welcome. Happy to have you on the EDC. I just also want to dispel the myth that apparently this has never happened before, because Mayor Murphy did appoint a Democrat and that never came before the Democratic Town Committee, and it was a surprise to all of us.
And frankly, if it's a breach of protocol, I'm happy to. I honestly didn't even think about it. You know, I mean, I just knew Dan, but I'll certainly run any future appointments through the RTC, and they could weigh in on it. But you couldn't find a better candidate, you know, in Dan for this position. Ms. Francis.
I just ask, I know very little, what I know about you is what I've seen you do. Have you ever been involved in any economic development capacity or
Only
sales?
as far as being in business. Small business, yeah.
Selling what yourself, basically?
Yeah, trying to grow my business, hiring, development of a good workforce, leadership of a company that provides exceptional services, and the slogan of our company is, if you're having fun, you've already won. So I actually try to inject positivity into everything the company does. So my experience in economic development is enriching the lives of others and myself.
Let me say, Dan's got a great experience. You know, he's got the DJ Trivia Company. He's in practically every restaurant in town, so he knows. It seems like it. You're everywhere, but
I got a big mouth.
but you are everywhere, and you're engaged in not just the restaurants, but the local businesses. So I think you've got a real sense of what's going on in town. You know, what can be done. Some of the issues that our local businesses are facing, and I think you'd be a great advocate for that. And yeah, you know, we got great people, you know, like Frank Wargo that have been doing it for many years. So it's a great combination of experience and kind of new enthusiasm and energy. So I think it's gonna be a great combination. Anybody else? Comments, questions? All right, we have all in favor.
Thank you.
Aye. Welcome aboard.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the Economic Development Commission, Daniel. Motion carries. Thank you. Road Advisory Committee. So I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the following people to the Road Advisory Committee for the terms 10/12/2017 to 4/12/2018. John Whitman, unaffiliated. Christopher Eaton, Democrat. Joseph Goodell, unaffiliated. Robert Barone, unaffiliated. John Oakes, Democrat. And Geraldine Lukovitz, unaffiliated.
Is there a second? Anybody from the committee here tonight? Okay, if not, I'll speak on their behalf. Just say this committee has really kind of stepped up and gone above and beyond what I thought was capable. And it's because they're all very capable individuals with diverse backgrounds in project management and public projects and roads. Robert Barone works for the city of Danbury and is involved in their roads program. So it's a really impressive group of people, and they've worked with Public Works. They've helped to kind of bridge the gap of understanding between how roads get done and how Public Works could kind of communicate that as well. They've been a soundboard for people that have complaints or have questions about roads. And it's really thanks to them that we got a plan put in place that we are actually now designing the reconstruction of Long Mountain Road and, I'm sorry, Mary, do you remember what's the other one? It was Long Mountain and Squire Hill, yeah, you know, which the Roads Committee identified as two of the worst roads in New Milford. And by prioritizing, you know, these roads, in working with Public Works, we were able to find money that was left over from previous band financing that we're actually in the process of designing those roads, and hopefully we could break ground in the spring. So there is discussion. I think they should definitely be renewed, but they've asked me to consider making them a permanent committee, and I think it's a great idea, and we could bring it up at a later point. I think it's going to be great for the town, but I do want to put some protocols in place so that while this group of individuals are great, I don't want to see it devolve into just a political appointments committee where it becomes Republicans versus Democrats. So I could work on some protocols and we could present something to this committee for a permanent appointment and creation. Yes, Mr. Bassett.
I was at their last road advisory committee, and I do agree with you. They did a very good job, the yeoman's job. Mr. Whitman runs a tight ship there, and I would definitely be in favor of them going from a temporary to a permanent committee.
Great.
So
great. So let's reappoint them now, and then I'll draw up some protocols, present it when we're ready to vote on a permanent creation. It does require, we have to go through the charter, so it's a little bit different, but we could jump through those hoops. Okay, so all in favor with the reappointments of this committee?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to them for serving. Item 9, tax collector.
Motion to approve the September 2017 tax refunds in the amount of $5,639.37, leaving a balance of $33,130.93 in the refund account.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10.
Motion for discussion and possible action on the conveyance of 0.296 acres at Danbury Road and Sullivan Road from Connecticut Department of Transportation to Town of New Milford.
Is there a second? Okay, you can see from your materials that this is something that has been in the works for a number of years. It's a carryover from the prior administration. So if you're not familiar, this is that little piece of property in front of, it's a Danbury Savings Bank on Route 7. It's a little triangle over there. It's gotten actually kind of overgrown. It used to be a lot better maintained. And the town acquired it, and there was this agreement worked out where they would transfer it to the town. The cost is $1,000, which covers some of their administrative costs and getting surveys done and so on and so forth. But like I said, they've been working towards this. They actually passed a special act in the legislature so that they could transfer it to the town. And I think it's a good thing, and I know that Danbury Savings Bank is interested in the property as well. So once we get it, I'm hoping that we could work something out with them where they could landscape it and make it look nice, since it's right in front of their bank and would be an asset to them as well. So with that, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then item B for a special town meeting.
Motion for discussion and possible action on the scheduling of a special town meeting for approval of the purchase of 0.296 acres at Danbury Road and Sullivan Road from Connecticut Department of Transportation to Town of Milford. Do we have a date?
We could do it before the next town council. That's what I was just going to have to check out.
I second the motion.
We're looking at
Just looking at a date.
October 10th. We could do it for 6:45.
Okay, October 10th at 6:45 in the E. Paul Martin Room.
Okay. We got a second from Mr. Wargo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Hello, this is Greg.
Yes. Take a break. Yes. Yeah. Everybody, I need some water also. 5 minutes. Thank you, everybody. We are back in session, and we are up to item 11, 11A, Culinary School. I entertain a motion.
Motion for discussion and possible action on approval of proposed memorandum of understanding for the Culinary School to occupy space at John Pettibone Community Center.
Is there a second? Okay, I see that Dawn Hamakad is still here, as well as Mike Nahom, but I think you've heard from them. Yeah, sure, come on up. If there's any questions, let me kind of just reiterate some of the things that were said before. If you've been to the Culinary School and you see what they do, and you see these kids and you see their families and how proud they are, and how it literally is like a second lease of life sometimes for these guys, it's really incredible, and they're good at it. I mean, when they cater these events, the food is delicious. But then you see where they are right now, and they're in the St. John's kitchen, and they don't have exclusive use of it. It's small. You've got classes ranging from, 8 to 10 to 12, depending on the size sometimes. And it's a very cramped environment, and you've done a lot with what you can so far, but you've grown out of it. In order to kind of live up to your potential, you need a bigger space. And I think it's a really important note to emphasize that New Milford and the town has always been a partner with the community school. From that first time when you came here, you said 10 years ago, for that seed money, to the people and the personnel like Peg Molina, our social services director. We've always been a partner with the Culinary School, and this is just another opportunity for us to expand that partnership and allow you guys to grow, do more for the school, do more for the community, and ultimately more for the town. So it's really great. I know that you guys are excited. Yeah, Miss Francis.
So, obviously, I'm a supporter, and I would not want to see the community culinary school leave New Milford. I'm well aware of the wonderful things you do and the people that benefit, and those, I knew it was not 10,000 meals. I knew it was 80,000 meals. So, back to school for Peg. So one question I have is, it came up, a comment before, that the MOU is, in essence, I think Mike mentioned it, a vehicle or a tool for you. Could you just explain what it is that this will do for you?
Yes, so the MOU will really help us in our fundraising efforts. So we have to outfit the kitchen there and raise the funds for that. So having something in place, and contingent on zoning approval, of course, an actual lease would be contingent on zoning approval. But having this MOU in place allows us to fundraise and gives us, something concrete rather than this is what we hope happens. So when we're, approaching our potential donors, this would, absolutely help in those efforts.
Yeah.
So, we're looking to get the ball rolling here and to make it real.
Yeah. So it's a placeholder. I mean, the MOU, it's a memorandum of understanding. It's basically an agreement to agree in the future. It's more than just the talk that we've had, I think, over the past couple of years, where even when the debate about whether to close Pettibone was going on, one of the resounding choruses in the community was it would be a great place for the culinary school to go. And there's been other interest in the kitchen there, but I can't think of a better partner, that the town would want to partner with than the culinary school, considering everything that they're doing. And it's a great space for you guys. It's a bigger kitchen. I don't know what happened to the stoves or the sinks, so don't ask me. I know it would be great if they were there, and but I don't know. They've disappeared into the ether. But we've got a great opportunity to give you a classroom as well, and a dedicated space, and an opportunity for you to raise revenue too by kind of doing lunches and offering some services. If somebody rents out the cafeteria, they could use you if they want to. So we're just so excited. Ms. Lundgren.
I just want to say, it's so exciting to have been part of this process since 10 years ago when Peg first came to use that $3,000 that she had saved, and to think where we were and where we have come to now is just amazing. And I just want to see you expand and grow and offer more programs. And I know you had a great program over the summer for children that I had my granddaughter enrolled in, and she loved it. It was her favorite thing that she did all summer. And these are the kind of things that it would be just so wonderful to have that space to be able to offer more programs, and I think that it's going to be a huge benefit to the community. So I'm in back of this MOU 100% right now.
Mr. Wargo.
Yeah, I remember when this came before the council, Mayor Murphy, I think that's the reason it passed, because Mayor Murphy was in favor of it, and she's not one to give away money. But I remember her comment. She really liked this project because it was a hand up, not a handout. And we look at how many classes have gone?
35.
How many kids have been helped?
I'll help you out with that.
So
256.
256, maybe.
It's a good process, and I commend the mayor, the first mayor who approved this, and I hope we continue with expanding more programs.
Sure.
Mayor Murphy always referred to this as our culinary school, and that's absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Mr. Esposito.
Dawn, I cannot thank you and Blythe and the rest of the folks on that culinary school committee, the main executive board, for all the work you've done. As you know, you've helped friends of mine, children get into that school that were struggling. They've come out, they've become very successful. Older friends that were transitioning from careers in the banking field are now successful executive chefs. John is doing a phenomenal job. It is, as you said, it is a hand up, not a hand out. I have seen nothing but success come out of this school, and I give you all my support.
Great. Ms. Francis.
One question on the MOU, well, a couple questions, but one is the rent. How was that arrived at? I mean, we don't really have a basis for knowing what the building itself as it exists would have a rent for. There are comparable, I guess, I'm not really sure how comparable would be.
I'll tell you, Kevin, our economic development director, did some analysis, within the community, and we're looking at, basically, we're not looking to make a profit off of this, but we do want something to help with the maintenance and upkeep of the facility. So with regard to this, the kitchen plus the classroom, $1,500 would just seem to kind of fall into this sweet spot where it's not as much as you would pay if you were paying market rates in a private building, but it's enough so that we could justify the wear and tear and everything that goes into having you guys there. Right.
Any work to the building is the town.
What do you mean?
In any maintenance, heating, cooling, lawn mowing, but you will take care of getting the kitchen and
Right. They'll have exclusive use of the inside, be responsible for it. Like I said, I wish we had the stoves and the sinks there. It kills me every time, but it's nice that you're actually raising money and you'll have, it's maybe a good thing. It's a blessing in disguise. You'll have better equipment. Yeah, and exactly. I know that you're getting donations as well. But yeah, they'll be responsible for the inside, and like any other kind of situation, landlord is responsible for the outside and the major infrastructure issues. Yeah. Mr. Bass.
Thank you. On the MOU on number 3 for the term, talking about a term of rental possession shall be 15 years. How is that 15 years for the term?
What do you mean?
Charter any leases, it's up to 5 years. So how would we kind of dovetail those two?
Let me address, because somebody had made this kind of comment that this needs to go to a town meeting. This is something that I spoke with Randy DeBella previously as well. He actually reviewed this MOU and helped draft it. So an MOU is just an agreement to agree in the future. So this doesn't have to go to a town meeting. We're not subject to X, Y, and Z. The 15 years is, gives them sufficient confidence that they're not going to get kicked out. They're going to make this investment, and they're not going to get kicked out after, a year or two. They're spending over $100,000 to come in there. So if there is an issue with the charter, we'll put it to the town meeting, and the town meeting controls at the end of the day. Maybe it'll be an exception to say, if the town agrees when we sign, whether it's a 15-year lease or a 5-year lease, it's going to have to be approved by the town at the end of the day. So, we could address it then.
And Dawn, the MOU, by getting this, that's kind of what your donor base, your larger donors are expecting.
So
to be
something
MOU.
that's a little, more concrete than us telling our donors, this is what we hope to do, this is our dream, so we have something, from the town that shows their faith in this.
Thank you, Dawn.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think for Rebecca, I think this is first question. So I understand what an MOU is, and I have a good idea what a lease is. What is how did either side get out of this if the need arose? Is it just cancel?
Hold him for
I
a
mean-
second.
No, I mean, I know what happens in a lease, so with
Yeah.
an MOU, is it just shake hands and goodbye?
Let me answer that, you know, so that
Okay.
there's a good faith obligation, you know, that we're entering into this MOU. So they're relying on our good faith to raise money, collect money from donors, and you know, start the process and spending money so that they could get into this space contingent on lease and everything else. And we're relying on their good faith that they're going to take those actions and move forward so that we're not losing an opportunity to have this space occupied by somebody else who may be more serious. So
Absolutely.
now if it doesn't go forward, you know, if everybody acts in good faith and it doesn't go forward, then yes, we go our separate ways. And it's not as binding as a contract or a lease, but it still does have some, you know, important obligations, and I think that's important.
Well, the 15
to
years,
know.
that's the only reason I ask, is I mean, 15 years ago, you would never have thought you'd be standing here. I was eating your croissant. So, it was just really for my edification. I'm not as familiar with MOU as I am
Sure.
with lease. And it is, I don't know how you came to 15 years as opposed.
I wanted 20. I think they wanted 15. I mean, I want them to know that they're going to be in this space, and you know, for all intents and purposes, they don't have to worry about, you know, changes in administration or, you know, changes in how people
Exactly.
feel about, you know, the building itself. That if they're going to make this investment and make this commitment, that it's for the long term and the long haul.
I'm actually more concerned that they're going to grow too much and need more from
it-
us.
it
That's
would
my
never be
concern.
any-
Good problem.
Yeah.
There's always a safety valve in the lease, you know, that says, you know, we could mutually agree to let people out, and if that were the case, if you needed a bigger space, the town is not going to hold you in breach of contract or anything like that. We'll make sure there's provisions
You
in
heard
there.
it here.
Mutually agreed upon. No, nobody's going to kind of, you know, evict you or do anything like that. You know, we're going to have a good relationship. Mr. Bass.
Thank you. And Dawn, currently, you're going through the MOU, and is the plan to still continue on with the education while going through this? Is there like a time frame you guys?
Yeah, what we
have?
would like to do, you know, we're still running classes now, and we, you know, the best case scenario would be that we would move in the summertime if we were able to raise the funds in you know, time for that, but we are still operating, you know, and still, you know, we're at St. John's until this all, you know, this project was finished.
And in your fundraising, how much are you guys looking for as far as?
So for, you know, we're looking to raise money to outfit the kitchen, to expand our catering program, and for the classroom space. But for that kitchen itself, we're looking to raise $100,000. And for the, in order to be able to expand that catering program and provide a better learning experience for our students and increase our class sizes.
Ms. Richardson.
And if we agree to this today, are you starting your fundraising campaign like tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, we've already started, you know, in a quiet way, and so this means that we could, you know, go public with it, you know, so yeah, we're already there.
Mr. King?
Just curious, could you ever envision outgrowing that space? That's a great commercial kitchen.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, who knows what could happen in the future? I would really see more like satellite locations rather than, you know, in other cities or towns rather than outgrowing that space there. That's what I would envision.
So the only other thing that I have in my mind is the people who participate in the program, a lot of them do take public transportation. And we do have an intersection there that
The bus is already going through the circle. So the
the
public
Danbury
bus
will go around through the
The
circle.
Heart bus is going through the, you know, has already agreed that they'll stop, they'll go
Okay,
through the
if
circle.
I say that's where I want to go, they'll go in. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
thought about that because it's a bad place. Great.
Yeah, no, we spoke about that with them, so they're already set up so that they will actually kind of go in there, drive through the circle, and come out so that there's no issue.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Very convenient, you know, a few stops closer for
Oh, yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
coming from, you know.
Don't have to go over the bridge, you know, it could be 25 minutes right there. So, all right, great. With that being said, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you
look
very
forward
much.
to working with you. Item B, sports
Motion
complex
for
plan.
discussion and possible action on the creation of a temporary committee to explore the consolidation of sports fields and facilities into one location. This temporary committee will consist of 7 members and 2 alternates for a term of 6 months.
Second.
Okay, I'll give a little background about
Next up, we have-
where this came from, how it got to this point. So I think we all remember, a couple of years ago, there was a scare when, Garrick was thinking about taking back the ball fields over at, the Garrick fields. And it would have required, a major reorganization of, I forget, it was like 4 or 5 baseball fields over there. So it got us thinking about some kind of consolidation. We've got sports fields all over the place. The football field is on Meadows still property. The Bulls are over there. The baseball fields are at Garrick. We've got fields, over by Meadows still. I mean, not Meadows still. The KC, and we're just spread out all over town. And it seems to be we're kind of spread out in these industrial areas, which is not the best use of our industrial property, and it's at risk. They're all on private property. So I found out that the prior administration had created a committee with Rob Beebe, Tom Pilla, and a couple of other people. So they already looked. They went out and it was an ad hoc committee. They looked at what the potential around town and some of the kind of larger properties that the town owned, but they're privately owned as well. And they did a lot of the legwork. I spoke to Tommy about it, and it gave me, an exhaustive update on, how they got to where they were and what their recommendation was. And so we started this again. I met with Rob Beebe and Michelle McNamara and AJ McNamara to discuss this consolidation. I've been talking with the coach of the swim team, Gene, who was involved in the community pool push a number of years ago. So the talk is there, I think the enthusiasm is there, and I think the need is there. We have such an amazing sports program in town that the time has come again to kind of address this issue. And we've got these people that are willing to serve, and we're going to invite a nice cross-section of the community as well to serve on this. And that's the kind of motivation for this temporary committee. I think a lot of it has been done already, and it's a matter of kind of continuing with the work that's already been done. So, Mr. Warden.
Yeah, just while you were talking, I had thought Garrick Industries probably isn't expanding there because of what the blowback would be if they took the fields back. That would be the bad guys in town.
They put the notice out a couple of years ago. And
So
they did.
By moving the sports fields to our property, frees up industrial property for future development, which generates taxes.
Right.
And right now, that will never generate more taxes. So I think it's a great idea. It's long in the making. It should have been done 10 years ago.
And if you've got kids that are in different sports or in different teams, I mean, you're driving from one end of town to the next. You're all over the place. Yeah.
I actually saw a piece on ESPN last week, and it was like a sports piece, and the amount of economic boost that you get from sports fields when it comes to AAU tournaments and travel tournaments, people coming in from all over the country to play these tournaments is huge for some towns and life-changing for some towns. So I think it would be a good idea. I played sports all my life in this town, and it's just such a great activity for kids, so I think it's a good idea.
You're right. We made such an amazing investment with the turf fields at the high school, and they've been such a great asset and benefit. People are so excited. I just saw the band competition over there the other night, and just being able to bring people, and that's at the high school level. But even below that, at the youth sport level, we've had I see the fields, they're packed, and they're all over the place. So consolidating that and having a place, a complex where everybody can come together would be, you're right, it would be great for the town. Mr. Bass, Ms. Francis.
I think it's a wonderful idea, great idea. Also, I know Jessica was talking about how it impacts and changes lives, and it does. Sports do. Also, there's a lot of people when they're looking to move into a community, they're looking at these sports fields and sports activities, and it can be a difference between New Milford or Brookfield or any of those other areas. If we can be competitive and get those people to move into town, I think that's great. I'm all for this.
Hopefully we
Great
become,
idea.
you know, the kind of, the location where all these other towns come and have our tournaments, and it's great to bring everybody into town as well. Yes, Ms. Francis?
I've been to some great centers like this in New Jersey. There's a couple, and they have every sport, plus they have a park, they have a pond, they have a hot dog stand, they have everything you could want. And the only thing I'm going to say about this is, like I said before on some other committees, that we need to be sure that there are free and open thinkers, a couple of them at least on this committee, because we do not want to do things the way they've always been done, and we need somebody to understand that we don't always know everything about what this committee is going to be dealing with. So because we know there's property here or there's property there, quite frankly, if this had been able to be brought up a couple of years ago, maybe we wouldn't have spent all that money at the school. Maybe we would have expanded and had a sports complex that would include that field somewhere else. So all I ask of any committee is, don't do what we've always done. Step outside, learn what other towns and other states have done, and think big, out of the box.
Yeah,
out of the sports ring.
Sure, Mr. Esposito.
I agree. If you just take a ride to Monroe some years ago put a complex on top of Wolf Road and consolidated everything.
Yeah, so you go one place.
And it's an absolute joy to go and watch a sporting event there because, as you said, there's a pool, there's a park for the little ones.
Yeah, that's exactly
Mom and Dad can stand on one sideline and watch 2 or 3 kids play. This is long overdue here, long overdue.
Right. Yes, Mr. Warren.
Yeah, Pete just brought up a point. We had an EDC meeting the other day, and when the people were presenting, they were talking about New Milford. And what caught my attention was New Milford is losing population. Our population is going down. When I moved to this town 30 years ago, we were figuring, how big are we going to get? Well, we're not getting bigger anymore. We're getting smaller. And if we don't do something to attract people, like Pete said, we're not going to grow. There's a lot of competition out there for people. And we better get in the game or we're going to lose out.
For people with children and people our age, everybody. Yeah,
and there's not many people my age.
Well, that's true.
I don't know, Frank.
Yeah, so I think it's, we've got a nice consensus. I encourage people to contact me if they are interested. I think we're going to get a good group of people, though. We've got some good interest from the sports leaders of the sports communities, but like I said, we are looking for a nice cross-section as well. So with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, Bike and Trail Committee update. Gentlemen, good to see you again. Oh, and Mr. O'Brien. Back from his, epic trip cross-country.
Made it to Wichita.
To Wichita. It's amazing.
Thank you. Tom O'Brien, 134 Wellsville Avenue. I'm here as the chairman of the New Milford, Town of New Milford's Bike and Trails Committee. I've just got a couple words to say. If you don't mind, I'd like to start out by reading an excerpt from the minutes of a past town council meeting. This was in regards to a grant application for a project called Greenway 2000. So I just want to read a couple sentences. Greenway 2000 calls for developing a trail along the Housatonic River from Youngs Field Road to Helen Marks Park and building a canoe launch. The Greenway is envisioned eventually to extend from Gaylordsville to the Brookfield line. That was from the minutes of the town council meeting of September 28, 1999. So I'm reading that to let you know that the New Milford River Trail was not my idea. A lot of people think it was me. It's a crazy idea for me. This has been percolating around this town for decades, for as near as I can tell. And actually, I moved here, my family and I moved here in 1999 and read about this in the paper and got very excited because my son was 1 year old at the time. And I dreamed about him being able to walk to Pettibone School or ride his bike or eventually to the high school. He graduated a year ago. So we're a little bit behind schedule. However, we've made great progress in the last couple of years. Thanks to Mayor Grambach's support, thanks to the support of all the members of Town Council. We've made tremendous progress. Number one, I thank you for setting up the town-sponsored Bike and Trail Committee. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to recognize Seamus McKeon, Lisa Arison, and Mary Jane Lundgren, who are here tonight, also members of this committee. We've met for a year and a half every 2 weeks for a year and a half in this room on a Wednesday morning to plan how to advise the town on how to make this project a reality, and in general, how to make this town more amenable to walking and biking. So they've put in tremendous effort, and we're very grateful to them for that. And I think this has been a terrific addition to the town. The other thing we're grateful for is the Youngsfield Riverwalk. I personally think it turned out fantastic. And just tonight, 2 people separately came up to me today to tell me how beautiful the river looks like now. So that's another great step forward. So the other thing, what the Bike and Trail Committee worked so hard on for a good 6 months is figuring out how to plan this trail. And we brought the idea to you to hire a planning firm to do a preliminary engineering study. We thank you for funding that. The plan we chose, as you know, is Malone and McBroom. And they have come up with a conceptual design for the uncompleted 8 miles. And there's a lot left to do. We haven't reached the point of coming up with cost figures yet. There's easements to be considered, permits and everything else. But this is a design for where this trail can go and the phases that they're suggesting it be done in. So having said all that, I'd like to introduce Vince McDermott and Tom Scheel from Maloney and McBroom to take you through the plans for completing the new Milford River Trail. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Tom. Yep.
Trying to use your equipment is we're working about it, but I think we're getting.
Yeah, I'll get everyone.
We're gonna keep talking. Take the cap off. There we go. We got some success. All right, so you're gonna have to bear with us on the color here.
Slide it forward.
Our screen would have to come. I don't know how much
Screen out.
cord we have here to make it.
Put the screen up all the way.
There you go. That's a great idea.
Nice job, Frank.
You guys are in charge of getting it back.
That's a good
We'll
point.
try to move that chair there. All right, so I'm Vince McDermott, and my colleague Tom Scheel. And we're going to talk to you about some of the thinking of the committee that we've been working with here. And we're going to try to be brief, because I know it's late in the evening. The committee, and with our help, has divided the trail that extends from Boardman Bridge all the way down to the town line at Brookfield into 5 sections. And we're going to take them one by one, but I need to clarify some terms that you'll hear from us that are important and distinguishing. The term shared use path is a single path, generally off-road, that is suitable, typically 10 feet in width, 8 foot in width in tough sections, may be paved or not paved, but it is simply for that single purpose. A side path is the same type of facility, except it runs parallel to an existing or future road. Then, of course, you know what a sidewalk is. And a term that you'll hear is a share row. You, in fact, have a share row out on Housatonic Avenue. That's meaning it's identified to motorists to recognize that bicycles are also on that road. It is not a painted line or anything like that. It's just some symbols. And then the term soft trail is oftentimes something that is more for pedestrian use rather than for bicycles and so on. So you're going to see both of those throughout our presentation. So the first phase is what we're calling Meadows, approximately 1 mile in length, beginning at Boardman Bridge and running down through Meadows to their entrance. Okay? A lot of it in the green here would be land to be acquired in some form or another by easement or otherwise on Meadows, and then to the south, farther to the south, would strictly be by easement as it goes through their property. The key here is that as we start at the railroad crossing, significant, and we have 2 areas in red, and then a third one farther down that are areas where we would need some sort of boardwalk. It's not going to You want to try to connect it? Oh, okay, thank you. So red, those are two areas that are very close to the buildings, and we don't want to disturb their buildings, so we would have to project some sort of elevated structure over the embankment ever so slightly. So that's an interesting location for all of this. The northerly part is exciting. It's close to the river. It's close to the road as we come across from Meadows Trail and where we join here. So one challenge, I'll point to several of these, is dealing with the railroad. And we have already had some preliminary conversations. Basically, they said, don't touch my property. But we need to, and I think we're capable of working with them, because we need to create a landing of some sort for some folks to come up to the crossing, fix the existing crossing, adjust the arms so for safety. And what you're seeing here is the beginning of a ramp outside their right-of-way that begins to transition down to the lower section of the property close to the river. So in areas like that, this is a beautiful section. It's a little above the river, goes down closer to the river, and we envision some sort of soft, I shouldn't use that term, a non-bituminous or non-asphalt surface that would be suitable for biking, walking, and including some opportunities for interpretive signs, because we have found through our research that these areas are really special from an archaeological and historic point of view, and we want to celebrate that as part of the trail system. The second phase runs again from the left where we have left off from Meadows driveway all the way down to Hidden Treasure. It's a long distance, we recognize. It's about 2.8 miles in overall distance, and it would encompass some existing facilities that you already have. So in 2A, you can see two different types of trails. A yellow one close to the river, going over Wanapee Island, and then as you can see, and I hope you can see, along here is an alternative needing to follow Boardman Road, Housatonic Avenue. Because we recognize that at certain times of the year, the lower area could be inundated. So let me highlight a few things about these challenges. At the end of this area, where just to the left of the photo would be the entrance to Meadows, there is an area where we are hamstrung by the road, gate-beam walls, retaining walls that are holding up the road. This is a special area. You may need to push this off for some time as you work through the issues associated with this. But it's an exciting area, in our judgment, because there you have it, you can see it along the road, but that's what it could look like. Now, whether it is this particular structure or a different type of structure, the permitting is challenging. The construction of this would be very challenging as it relates to the road. And these are the issues we're working through with the committee now. So while it may not be that in particular, it will be elevated, because if you drop it down lower, you're really in the river. And we have to be above the river, we have to be stable. So this is something that we need to discuss with some of the environmental regulators as you move forward. The next section down from where we left off there is the part that I said could go down as a soft trail in Wanapee Island, some sort of bridge structure, and then coming back up onto Housatonic. The alternative is Shero in this area here. And perhaps as we get down into here, as you can see on the photo on the left, where there's homes very close to the road, we need to work our way through that. A closer up photograph shows you how difficult that might be. But look at it this way. If you need to go as a Shero, there could be pedestrian sidewalk improvements in there to define where the pedestrians can walk in both directions and the bicyclists follow traffic from the sheriff. So there are opportunities here, and this, we're concerned, and the committee I know will be having some more public forums here, is to make sure that the homes along this street, while this work is likely to be in the right-of-way, it is a change, and we want to make sure they're comfortable with the change. Further down, as you pass Helen Marks Park, you can see here, right, that yellow leg, if you will, that's where the wannabe trail route would join back to Housatonic Avenue and Helen Marks Park. From here into where the recently constructed trail is, the current thinking of the committee is to keep it on the road. There are so many challenges, not with Helen Marks Park, but having to cross Aspetuck Brook again with another structure, affecting homes all the way down, while it would be more desirable to be close to the river. That's a challenge that the committee at this point is willing to forego. The yellow here, first part of this yellow, is what you have just done very successfully, bringing people close to the river. People now meander up to the top of the hill, now, and why we are showing this in here, we want to formalize that and make it handicap accessible as you come up the hill and into the intersection. Some of you may not be aware, but there is a state proposal to fix the signal. The design is done on 202, yes, on Ridge Street. And we would hope, and we've spoken with the mayor already, to alert DOT that putting in the appropriate pedestrian phasing in that signal at this point would be a good thing. And not a very expensive thing based on the percentage of what they're doing anyway. The final couple of sections here, now we're going down West Street. And we're looking on the westerly side of West Street here, making sidewalk improvements up to this point where you have a brand new bridge. And from here over and down toward Hidden Treasure, there are some sidewalks that have been recently constructed. We would want to take advantage of them. So in this case, it would be Shero and sidewalk down to Hidden Treasure. They're just simply, we talked about going down to the river, but can you imagine all of the property issues in here, the crossing of that water course, just not practical. But it will take us down to this point here, and I'll go to the next slide. Come on, next slide. And that is into Hidden Treasure. This trail, for the most part, is a pedestrian trail for hiking. We see improving that sufficiently to allow bicyclists to come to what we're calling the end of the northerly section, or phase 2. Phase 3 is a jewel, and it's the biggest challenge in my judgment on this property is how do you get across the river? We've looked at other alternatives using the piers of the existing bridge, and you don't want to inherit that problem. You'd also would really be facing some hurdles with the railroad. So the suggestion that we're working with the committee on is to come across the river in 2 sections of bridge. The first section about 175 feet to the little island, continuing that all the way over, and then a route all the way up to Pettibone School. Exciting, exciting. Now, we still have to work through the constructability. We're waiting for new topographic information, which is part of our work. It just hasn't been available to us to understand exactly what that means. Phase 4 is almost independent, but the connectivity between the north and the south occurs at the bridge. And in this particular case, we're basically talking from Pettibone School on street, or I'm sorry, a side path on Pickett District Road all the way down to here, so all in front of KC and the like, before crossing in by the town fields, getting out to the river through land that is owned by the Nature Conservancy, following a route, crossing where the Still River, where there are bridge abutments in place, and following ourselves out to the existing railroad crossing down to Still Road. So, side path here, it's already there, but want to make it formalized, going underneath the bridge and into Lover's Leap State Park. So let's talk a little bit about some details in here. You can see here, again, side path right along the street, all the way down to the ball field. That's the existing condition, and that's a condition that you could expect with the side path. Encouraging activity by the employees in the manufacturing area is certainly an attribute for industry from an economic development point of view, for employees' health and benefits. As you go farther down, crossing, there is an existing rail crossing that we've been talking to the railroad about as to whether or not that can be used for pedestrian use. But we also are investigating whether or not you could take this into a tunnel underneath the tracks, and we believe that's also feasible, although crossing at the surface based on the amount of use the rail gets is certainly a better alternative and considerably less expensive. You can also see here in that photo the bridge abutment at the Still River before you would cross over. Then we wind up at that point at Harrybrook Park. And Harrybrook Park is a great destination, and there's some conversations that would need to be had with them as we move forward. But we would also see at Harrybrook the opportunity, you have a great loop system, so if it ever stopped here temporarily, that's great. From here on, all the way down to the Brookfield line, have a different set of challenges. One, as you can see, right here would be the connection from Harrybrook over to the golf course, working with the golf course on their easterly edge, and then down into some sharrows. So, in 5A here, that's the Harrybrook. 5B is Kenilworth Valley Country Club. And this in through here would be a series of on-street, off-street, except for one fabulous piece that I want to show you in a second, and that will end the discussion. So there's Harrybrook. There are existing, and also Lanesville Road. Some improvements to the Lanesville Road Bridge would be required, but not terribly significant in our judgment. That's the routes through Harrybrook. And this photo here, the non-golfers, is an existing boardwalk on the easterly side of the golf club. So as you're moving down, here's some of the street issues that we would be facing, but those can be worked out, again, as a sharrow. But then you have a beautiful off-road condition down here below the animal control facility. Take a look at that as a beautiful wildflower meadow, and just simply a walking trail through that meadow, because obviously this area is subject to flooding on occasion, and you certainly don't want to destroy that environment.
What's that section?
Various people, but one of them, I believe, is Miantanag, and so conversations through the committee would have to be held with Miantanag and other owners. So that is where we are. What we're doing in the next 2 months, we're talking about, we should be completed by Christmas. We will be refining all of these with the committee, outreach not only to the public who might be affected, but also to the major stakeholders, KC, Nature Conservancy, Ontonagon, Harrybrook, and that would be done through appropriate channels, through the mayor's office and the planning office and the like. When the committee refines, when we refine these even further, then we will be putting dollars to this and also suggesting sources of money for development. Obviously, the easiest piece at the present time is that first piece, beginning at Boardman down to Meadows still. The route there is pretty clear. We have a cooperative property owner, and we have to work with the railroad company with the crossing of Boardman Bridge. So that's a doable piece that could be done more quickly. So with that, we're happy, Tom and I are happy to answer questions, and I'm sure Tom O'Brien is here to answer questions as well.
Ms. Francis.
Oh, it's not a question. It's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah.
And the fact that you did some of those little add-ins there to Photoshop and what it would look like makes it so much easier for those of us who can't envision. I think it's fantastic.
I'm good. I'm glad
We should all buy lottery
You can thank your
tickets.
committee for that, because it's their vision.
Thank them all.
It's a great presentation, and it kind of segues into what we're doing now. We needed this plan so that we can talk about the next step, and there are grant opportunities. I just spoke with Steve Dunn today in Brookfield, and he said, he's creating a committee so that we could coordinate the connection Brookfield and there's still River Trail, which he said he's got 900 people a day sometimes on there, and bringing that connection up to New Milford. So I told them that we've got a committee in place, and we're actually doing a presentation tonight. So for them to be able to see what we're proposing, how it connects with them, they'll work with our committee. And now it's a multi-municipality kind of thing. It's not just all of us acting like an island. It's a really great thing, and this is a big part of it.
Essential regional approach is the right approach.
Absolutely. Yes, Michelle.
Just one question. So phase 2, when you're talking about Young's Field, I know, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but isn't the River Trail Committee also having plans at Young's Field, and are you guys working together?
We will, and in the brief conversation with downtown, whatever your committee.
Riverfront.
Riverfront. We've already talked with them about it in terms of what they can do. Yes, that needs to be visited by this committee very carefully, so we don't impact athletic facilities, but we make that connectivity, so important connectivity from that lower level up to the commercial area of town.
If I can just put my 2 cents in there, if we can get some more basketball hoops in that area.
We'll talk to your partner, recreation.
They told me to talk to you. So.
Well, we'll be happy to design it for them.
Yeah, you kind of hit on a really interesting point, though. That river, the riverfront, the Youngsfield Riverwalk right now, I've always said, that's phase 1, that's the hub, and what we're doing with this and what you kind of created visually is an opportunity to extend that north and extend it south. And that's always been the plan, and I hope you could share this, and hopefully we could share it as well so that people could see the presentation and some of those stills, because it's incredible.
We flush this out and through the committee.
That'd be great.
Leave a electronic version of this. I can't do it tonight, but I can get it.
Sure, even print out in color, we could share it so that people could see, this is not insurmountable. We're using roads, but we're also coming down to the river. Yeah,
post it to you.
Sir?
that'd be great.
Can't you just create a website so people can go to it and see the
We can put it through the town. We can put it on your own website.
Well, I was saying I could put it on the New Milford River Trail.
Yeah,
River Trail.
Where would you put it? On who?
Tom and I are both on the New Milford River Trail Association.
What works?
Yeah.
We'll get it out there, I saw Mr. Watzak.
Yeah, one question I noticed, a lot of the, I was happy to see that you recognize things like the opportunities for the placards for information about the areas they're passing and connections to the little side trails. One thing on the Young's Field section that we're talking a lot in many different things in this meeting tonight about drawing people to the town, and I just want to make sure we have a very clear picture of how we're going to connect the downtown at the Young's Field location. One thing I think I've mentioned to Tom and some other people is the idea of we've got those beautiful stamped concrete sidewalks downtown. It would be interesting if we could bring something like that across the parking lot to wherever it connects to the top of the hill, so that there's actually a visual connection. When people do come to our downtown, they recognize that the river as something that's part of the town, the riverfront.
I think that's a good point.
Sure.
Isn't there an effort to create signage between downtown and the river with economic development?
I'm sorry?
Isn't there an effort for economic development to create signage?
Yes.
To direct people between.
Yeah.
So this is part of what we're asking.
Absolutely, and Dan is here. We've been talking about, actually formalizing that path between the Riverwalk up to the stairs, kind of around where the playground is, around the skate park, because sometimes we get mushy and soggy. And it's nice to see that incorporated with this and some kind of handicap accessible ramp that gets people up to the parking lot. But yeah, we want to put signs there so it's directing people to the restaurants, to the shops, the art gallery, and there is more of a connection. So
And going up
that's
to meet
important.
handicap accessibility is perfect for the skateboarders.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll find plenty of use for it. Absolutely, yeah. It was a great presentation. I'm really excited. There was another question over there. Yeah. Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the connection with Brookfield and where you would see that most favorably occurring?
Brookfield right now is working in the Four Corners area, and so there's a gap. So I think from a regional approach, right, we can bring our trail right up through, while working with the stakeholders, which would be, we can bring our trail up to the town line.
With Brookfield?
Up to the Brookfield town line, and then we would have to talk and coordinate with Brookfield as to their plans for connecting in, and their status, because I think right now, they're doing streetscape work, and they're right in the little downtown area, but they still have to get that plan, I think, in place for the full country.
But I heard the mayor mention Steve Dunn, and they're serving.
Yeah.
Capable.
But that's really.
And that's the emphasis, is to connect now, that Four Corners, the streetscape with this, and it's like a little planning, but it'll be a good opportunity.
It's 10 years old.
Yeah.
And HVC.
Right. And Brookfield is in the process of updating some of their zoning as it would affect development on Federal Road. So that has to play out a little bit as well.
Yeah, so there has a trail built to that center area, and then the question is now.
Right. So they have studied it's 10 years old, so they need to be.
It looks like though if one would start with the northern part, because we seem to be more optimistic about the ability to get it to the northern part rather than to the southern part first. It strikes me that what would incentivize Brookfield will be ultimately when they can see that we're going to get down there inside the question 10 years. So I think that's probably a long-term challenge.
It is a long-term challenge. I think the piece along the condition is a lot of merit too, as I know their plans look for rehabilitating Beacon District. Perfect opportunity to incorporate.
Yeah, these phases, they don't necessarily have to be linear. So we're talking about the northern part, but I think the southern part actually makes, is very easy once we get to, Harrybrook Park, and you look at it from that point of view, you get to pick a district. Bridges are another, issue, but we don't have to look at it at that point of view. And I actually kind of look at it from a northern to southern and work towards the middle, a little bit easier. Yeah, but yes, Mr. Warden.
You started at the Boardman Bridge, crossing there and moved south.
Yes.
Is the north of that to Galersville, is that considered done? Because you have a trail and then they have River Road. So in essence, that part is done.
We consider that.
Good.
River Road is a shared.
Let's post it. I mean, that's a good part. That's a good geographic distance that we've already got done.
Yes.
And it makes a big piece of that puzzle.
To add to that,
Yeah.
Kent is looking at, through another committee that Tom is on, from Kent up to Cornwall Bridge. That's in the incubation stage.
That's all part of the Western.
Right, part of.
Yeah, relocation, yes. So, a lot of stuff going on in this area.
So thank you so much for your presentation, and we'll put it out there and let the public kind of digest it and allow you to do your work to fine tune it a little bit, and we'll talk about the next phase. I mean, the whole point of this is to keep that momentum going. So thank you so much, and thank you to members of the committee. Great job. Thank you so much. So item 13. The conflict of interest, that's gotten a little, it's got a lot of comments. Let me say something about how we got here and address this to Tom also, that this isn't something that we're trying to do a witch hunt, or even if we put it out, some people have said I should have just referred it to the Ethics Commission. Well, it's a kind of a damned if you do and a damned if you don't situation. If I send it to the Ethics Commission, it becomes kind of a political matter. But what really spurred this, and I want Tom to understand this as well, when I got a pretty frantic email on August 25th from Joyce Hermanod, basically kind of throwing her and what the committee had been working towards for the past couple of months into disarray out of a request that came out of left field from the architect asking for more money to basically redesign, the work that they've already done and completed to accommodate this proposal for, I forget what it said, it's VRF technology, the HVAC technology that I know that you and your company had talked to the architect and the subcontractor about. So from there, it kind of snowballed to, how did we get to this point? Where is this coming from? Mayor, did you know about this? No, absolutely not. And then working backwards, over the course of a couple of days to figure out that, it came from, this meeting that you'd had with the architect and a proposal to install this VRF technology.
Can I interject before this goes any further? Because
yeah.
this really shouldn't even be on the agenda. Secondly, in your handout of number 13, there was not the associated letter that came from the owner of Green Star disputing your claim. It was not afforded to everybody in the room, and it should have been, because it categorically stated that we made absolutely no proposal to the architect or has solicited for the business of this town. I clearly stated, while the Library Modernization Committee was here, that we needed to build this to the highest energy efficiency standards. I said that to the newspaper. Katrina, sitting right there, put it in the newspaper. So this was not an out of left field type of thing. I have done this for years as a volunteer for this committee, like many people in this room, like the people on the Riverfront Trail, like the bike committee. Okay, we're all volunteers here. I did not solicit for this. I don't do public bid. I don't do public work. I didn't try to sell anybody anything. I did my due diligence to look at this proposal to make sure that we were building it to today's energy standards and tomorrow's energy standards. The proposal on the table by the architect, the design is beautiful. I have supported the expansion of this library since the very beginning. But their proposal to put in an 1869 technology, which is fossil fuel combustion technology. The boiler in your house was invented in 1867, along with the telegraph, okay, will put a carbon footprint over our library that is unnecessary when technologies that are accepted worldwide are installed everywhere else. All I did was educate, and luckily I was there because when I walked the building with their mechanical engineer, he made some assumptions that some of the existing ductwork in the attic could be reused. Well, if he had just walked up to it and tapped on it, he would realize it's not aluminum, it's fiberboard, it's fiberboard, which is illegal now, and a fire hazard. So I pointed out a half a dozen things in our informational meeting with him. I told him I said point blank to Sally and to him, I am not soliciting for this work. I have no interest in doing this work. Only as an expert in the building performance field would I make sure that I helped with oversight and helping to look at their design in the future when it comes to a building committee to make sure that we're building something that's energy efficient, which is going to reduce our carrying costs for the next 30 years and eliminate or almost reduce or almost eliminate our maintenance costs. So at no time did I solicit the town. I've been involved in this town for 12 years. I've been to dozens of ethics symposiums by the former town attorney. I know that ethics code backwards and forwards. And if everybody would like to read the one right here, 6B-7, form and content, complaints alleging violations of this chapter shall be signed under oath as to the truth of the allegations and shall include the name of the official involved and the specific act or acts alleged to constitute such violation. Complaints shall be submitted to the commission or its agent in a sealed envelope or package. The complaint shall include an adequate documentation. The official has engaged in alleged activities, such as copies of relevant documents or explicit references to specific pertinent public records. Failure to provide supporting information may result in dismissal of the complaint. As herein set forth, the existence and contents of any complaint shall be and shall remain confidential. So by virtue of this article in the newspaper, we have a true ethics violation. That's what we really have here. By virtue of putting this on this agenda, you have an ethics violation because right in 6B-7, this was not supposed to be, this tribunal that is being established right here, okay, is not under the purview of the town council. I have done zero wrong. I will continue to volunteer in this town, whether I'm an elected official or not, and I'll make sure that building, which I am in support of, that library, will have a 0 carbon footprint when we're done. And will cost this town less to run for the next 30 years to create a healthier environment for that library. This is a political farce.
Okay.
This body has no right to discuss this in this meeting. I have put a motion to strike this and to end this charade. If you have an issue with me, do it. Follow the rules, as Mr. Winter and others have said. Follow the rules. Make your complaint to the Ethics Commission.
No, all
Make
right,
your
so let me
complaint,
address
please.
some of the things that you.
What I'd like you to do, what I'd like you to do is read. What I'd like you to do is read the letter that was sent to you on the 24th. Dear
Mr.
Mayor
Esposito,
Brownback,
we've all
it has
got the
come to
letter.
my
We have the
attention
letter,
that you have
Tom.
made certain claims and
The letter
accusations.
all came to everybody via email.
But the
Mr.
people,
Esposito,
but the
I've
problem is
given
the
you-
people in the audience. The problem is the people in the audience don't have this information.
Mr. Esposito, I'll read it. I'll make it a
Please
part
read
of the record. I
Please
will.
read it into the record.
But
Please
please
right now.
don't monopolize this. I was trying to give you an opportunity not to go down the rabbit hole on this and give you a dignified way out of this.
I have a plenty of
let me
dignified
say,
way. I haven't done anything.
Let me address some of the things.
Dignified.
Mr. Esposito, so let's address that everybody knew what you were doing and it was just a matter of donation. I get an email on Friday, August 25th, from Joyce Hermanot saying, attaches an email correspondence, as part of our expansion, as proposed by Tom Esposito, this was a surprise to me, exclamation point. As indicated, so on and so forth, it's going to cost an additional $2,500 to consider your proposal. And then in response to that, let me just say, so from Sally, our library director, Sally Torno, saying, Joyce, I only barely understand this, so I'm not sure how to address it. She had no idea where this had come from. It was completely out of left field. And so it threw everybody into disarray. Why are we paying more money to accommodate this proposal that Mr. Esposito is making when it never went to the library board? He never went to the library modernization committee, certainly didn't come to me. And it was very confusing and upsetting to a lot of people that you went directly to the subcontractor and the contractor and basically said, listen, I'm a councilman and the council is concerned about energy efficiency on this project.
Never said that. That is a categorical lie.
That's the email from the subcontractor.
It's not from the subcontractor. The subcontractor may have his feathers ruffled because I pointed out of a half a dozen things that he did not identify.
All right,
That
Mr.
was going to
Esposito.
cost it. No, let me finish.
No,
Let me
you're
finish,
saying it's a lie. I'm going to read
because
it.
right here in the letter it states that Joe Novella, who you claimed was a party to this, Green Star has never participated in bidding process for municipal contracts, is not bonded for such contracts. We have extensive experience in making buildings energy efficient and specializing in certain HVAC technologies. At no time did we solicit for any remuneration, and we had no intent to participate in the eventual contractor's bid. This is a ludicrous claim because you haven't even documents to bid on.
Okay.
I did not make a proposal. I educated an old school engineer and architect. I walked away saying, I will give you all the information that is afforded to me. Do what you want with it. Please bring it to the Library Modernization Board. You decided to circumvent our ethics rules, which it's clearly stated
This isn't
here.
an ethics complaint.
It's a conflict of interest complaint.
But it's not an ethics complaint. It's a discussion involving a town council member involving himself in a town project.
I did not involve myself in a town project.
Miss Francis.
Okay, I am a member of the Modernization Committee, as you know. I know that you could read an email and say that it was in disarray, but we should never put any emphasis in things when we read them in emails, and it's hard to do. I was part of the email. At first it was $800, and Joyce herself admitted, and I think Katrina quoted her in the paper saying that it wasn't Tom or his company that presented this, that somehow in the interim between Lothrop and these other subcontractors, that it got to disarray maybe. But my point is, if this is indeed the ethics code of our town, which it is, and this has already been out into the public, which I think really is a very bad way to treat anything like this, when we do have an ethics code that we've been talking about here with a lot of us, I do think that you should ixnay on talking about it now, and let's take care of it the way it's supposed to be taken care of. And if Tom has proof that he hasn't done anything wrong except to do what he does, and any of us would do. If I was a painting contractor, I would offer my expertise to them. He's not profiting from it, so either put it into, excuse me, Mayor,
Yeah, sure.
either put it into the ethics mode where it belongs and stop smirking at me.
No, I'm not smirking at you.
If you
but I
went,
do have I want an opportunity to address.
if you went, you've been addressing this when he wasn't here. You knew he was on his honeymoon,
Don't
and yet you
say
left
that.
it
You totally
on.
do, Dave, because I
course
wrote in
not.
an email. I asked you in two emails and 2 phone calls to return my call, and you didn't afford me that respect.
We can address that.
Tom,
I don't know your personal life.
Excuse me,
It was
Mayor.
already in the agenda.
Excuse me.
Called
Tom,
you.
can
But you're
I
right.
say-
I called you
Tom,
twice.
I think
please.
Katie Francis has the floor.
Yes, I do.
Yes,
I apologize.
And I'm
get
going
to
to just
that.
say one thing, and please, I don't want you two to do this. I want you to take it the way it's supposed to go. But Mayor, there was an email to you from Tom saying he was on his way to be married and go on a honeymoon.
Yeah.
And you enabled it to be tabled, but you left it on the agenda. I found that to be a rather low blow thing to do. You said, when many people stood here and said Mr. Esposito is not able to be here tonight, you never offered, during participation, and I just talked to, we can't ever say anything. You never even offered up, well, he's on his honeymoon. Give the guy a break. You're hanging him before we've even had the trial. I would like to see this go the way it should have gone from the beginning. If he has nothing to hide, it'll come out. If you prove right, it'll come out. But it should not be done here. This is not the place.
Let me say something, and then we'll open it up to the floor.
Why
And
should it
don't
be-
side, because I want to address what you said. I printed this on the agenda on that Wednesday. I don't know that he's going on his honeymoon.
He
Yes,
sent
I
you
found the
emails.
email
I saw
after
them.
that. Yeah,
Well, I'm
after it
sorry
was
if
already
you don't catch
printed
up on your emails.
and filed. After it was printed and filed, there was an email that was on his honeymoon, and I agreed to table it. But I will not take it down because it was already made public record. So why would I take it down? And I do consider this serious enough, not for me to I'm not making an ethics claim here. I'm not making an ethics complaint. I'm not getting in the middle of that, but this is a council member, and if the council wants to refer it to the Ethics Commission, then they should do so. And if they don't, and if it is a moot matter, and if Mr. Esposito, like I said in my letter, will just confirm that he's not doing any work on this bid, but then he, instead of just saying, I don't plan on doing any work on this bid, instead he said, I never did. Well, you were providing an estimate. I saw the marketing materials. There is this much in marketing materials that you sent to the company promoting. Please don't interrupt.
Mr.
Promoting
Bromback,
your company.
it's not promoting my company. I sent
Mr.
them a
Esposito.
catalog that anybody in the United States can get.
There's got to be a way for people to talk one at a time. I'll let you speak, even though I had to
I
bite my tongue.
apologize. I apologize. I've
So,
lost my temper.
This is the marketing material, not only promoting the product that you were looking to sell, but also your company itself and other projects that you've worked on in New York City and New York State, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't just a matter of, hey, I think you guys should look at this VRF technology and stepping back from it. It was, hey, you should look at VRF technology, and we've done all this prior work. We're a great partner to work with. You were even identified as a vendor.
Absolutely
In the email from the subcontractor.
Absolutely not. What subcontractor? From who?
Mark Velzi said on July 25th, we met with Tom Esposito, and town councilman, and Joe Novella, VRF equipment vendor.
No, absolutely not. As you've read in this, we do not vend this equipment. We design this equipment. We put this equipment out for private installations. We do zero public bid. I have I have said it from the very beginning. I said it here. I said it to Ms. Torno. I said it to the engineer. I said it to the architect. I am not bidding this project. I am going to assist you in educating you on it. In my first 5 minutes in that meeting, they did not know this technology. The fastest growing technology worldwide to eliminate carbon footprint. I don't make it. I don't sell it. I design it. And then
the issue isn't the technology.
The issue
it's how we got there.
Right.
Ms. Francis and then Ms. Richardson.
I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lundgren. Calling Ms. Francis.
Because there are questions on both sides, I believe that this probably should go to the Ethics Commission. And Tom, you know what?
Please do.
You know, what's the big deal? I mean, numerous people around this table have been to the Ethics Commission. You can take it yourself. We can file, a complaint with the Ethics Commission. and
I'm
let's
not
get it
complaining.
resolved.
I'm not complaining about going to the Ethics Commission.
Well, let's
What I'm
just-
complaining about
instead
here
of
is
continuing this conversation, let's let the Ethics Commission.
exactly. I feel fine with that. Please
I
bring
mean,
that on.
I'm not gonna keep this conversation going if we're all just gonna agree on that, right? Yeah, okay.
Bring it on.
So I'll
Please.
make a motion.
Mr. Bear.
I think Mr. Bass was up first.
Mr. Bass.
Thank you, Councilman Bear. Just a quick, I guess, comment, I would say. Just seems interesting to me it'd just be pretty simplistic if we had a conversation. If we had a conversation in the very beginning. If someone thought this was this way, to pick up the phone and call and just say, is this a problem? Or what is the real story? You pick up the phone and you call. We had the new tree warden come in. What did we do? We asked the new tree warden, are you going to bid on any of your projects? Because now you're the tree warden. No. End of story. To me, it's just a pretty simplistic thing. And to continue to go and do this and waste the time of this board when we have a lot of other things to do, I just think all we can do is ask our fellow councilmen, are you going to bid on these projects? No, I am not. Then you're not violating any ethics code. I would like to ask our town attorney, if we have the vendor and the gentleman say, I'm not bidding, that pretty much settles it, I would think.
Well, that's what I was getting towards, giving the opportunity to confirm. And let me just say, you're right, a phone call would have been perfect in this situation. Tom, if you just called and gone to the Library Modernization Committee and said, hey, I think you guys should be looking at VRF. Why don't you ask the architect to do so? That's it. And then you step out of it. You know, when you get into, you scheduled a meeting and you spent the day at the library and then, they're changing the designs and you're giving an estimate without the Library Modernization Committee being involved, without the trustees and me, it created this kind of snowball effect. And that's why I agree. A phone call right from the beginning to say, I'm not interested in bidding on this product, but you guys should look at VRF because it's a technology I'm familiar with. It would have absolved this. So yeah, phone calls all around probably would have helped, but it did snowball. And we're at this point. Going forward, I don't think that and they've already said they're not going to go with this VRF technology, but there is the issue of how we got to this point. I agree. I think it's moot, so long as we all agree you cannot even appear to profit from a town project that's being funded. And I think, Frank, you said it earlier, it's the appearance of impropriety. If this hadn't come out to me, I hear somebody in the community says, Thomas Esposito's bidding on this project, he's providing estimates, isn't he voting on their funding for it? And that's the way these things get undermined. That's why I said in my letter, I don't believe that it's appropriate, but if you want to go forward, you could go to the ethics committee, And then we got into, I was never doing a bid. I don't want to get into that either. It's just right now the issue is you can't profit from town work if you're on this council. And, that's it. It's black and white.
I have been
End of
sitting at
story.
this table for 8 years. I've been involved in this town for 12. I know the ethics code backwards and forwards. I would have never violated. I never have violated it. And I've only volunteered my expertise like you do, and everybody at this table, and everybody in this room that sits on a board or a commission, okay? To be publicly attacked on this, and for the newspaper to not even reach myself or Joe Novella for comment, but put a front page newspaper article on the front of the Danbury News-Times on the Friday I left to get married, okay, seems a little fishy to me. It seems like it was a little contrived. It seemed like I was set up, okay? It is really beyond the pale of this group to actually have this type of discussion here, because there's a variety of problems that have arisen in this town that with a simple phone call, 2 emails, please call me, 2 phone calls, please call me, I never got the respect of a return phone call. If, Frank, you were the mayor, would you have returned my phone call? Or Walter, would you have returned my phone call?
Tom,
I'm asking you, would you have returned my phone call?
Okay.
Would this been a process that you would have just said, Tom, what the heck is going on here?
Okay.
I don't know, you didn't afford me that.
Here's the thing.
You didn't afford me
I
that.
sent you that letter, I explained and I gave you an out. All you had to do was say, I don't plan on bidding. And your response to me was, I'm volunteering and donating my expertise. It wasn't a solicitation, it was a donation. I'm not bidding, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, Tom, but based on your email, you were going to provide an estimate for the VRF system. Your person was, your partner was identified as the vendor. And it would be purchased as part of a subcontract in this larger award that would be awarded to this thing.
I think Katie Francis put the motion on the table or someone put the motion on the table to send it to the ethics. I think we're all maybe in agreement, so I think a vote at this point would be.
No, I suggested, we didn't actually make.
No, it was just a suggestion.
I
You guys gotta decide, do we
I think
want to
the
go
letter
through the ethics
here-
commission on this? Or can we just say, it would be inappropriate for somebody on the council to bid on a library project that you're voting on. And that's it.
Of course it is.
Let's leave it at that. We need to get that out there though, because the alternative is this flies under the radar and then it undermines the entire project. You know, if somebody's involved and there's allegations of double dealing. So that's it. I understand this. You wanted a phone call. I wanted assurances in writing that, this is the end of it.
And you have it.
Neither one of us got it.
But you have it now.
Well,
But
what I got was.
But it wasn't in the package. It was point blank. We are not, there's no solicitation or remuneration. There's no intent to participate in the eventual contractor's bid.
Let me just say, from that letter, I know you say you don't bid on public projects. The marketing material you sent, it did include schools, police, and fire departments. So it gives the impression that, you could bid on something like that. If that was something that was misinterpreted by the architects, then fine. We need to clear it out. But there was misinterpretations, it snowballed, and it got to the point where I'm getting a budget request for something that nobody knows anything about.
It should have never snowballed. It should never have snowballed, and I said it clearly multiple times. Clearly to Sally, clearly the architect, and the engineer. In fact, I said it 3 times during that walkthrough.
Well, apparently it wasn't clear enough, and in the future, it just cannot be done. You can't be in there advocating for this.
The lesson is learned by all, correct? That communication is the key. Walter and I just spent the break talking about this, is that I don't care what party you belong to, there are telephones and pissing contests, excuse my language, just don't cut it. It's 2017, we're all adults. Pick up the phone, you too could.
Of course.
Okay, well, you say of course, but I'm going to say is that it's important that we all talk. Some of us manage to discuss things without problems, and we don't agree on everything.
Sure.
So I'd like to see everybody start to do that. Mary Jane and I don't agree on anything, and we managed to get together on...
We can agree on some things.
We don't agree on everything,
Job
not anything. But it's
With that
important
being
for
said,
you
yes.
to be included in that, Mayor. I'm just saying, nobody's free of guilt here. So please make it part of your going forward life.
I react also. You're right. When I get phone calls, and I did, from Joyce, from Sally, I do react in a way that, makes me upset. But you're right. Tom had called in the beginning. If everybody had called and said, hey, this is what we're doing, we're just looking at this VR technology, we don't get to this point.
Okay,
That's the point that I want to make. You're right. So that's kind of cleared. We're cleared. There's nothing going forward, so there's nothing for ethics unless you were looking to bid on it, which you made clear that you're not. So let's consider it a learning experience that we've got to be super careful when it comes to anything involving town money, town projects, town funds.
I have been the first person to comment on that over the years.
Mr. Bear.
Well, if we're to that point then.
I'm excited about this.
You're excited about this one?
Yes.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.